Well, hello, it's Romania Black, and I'm going to be real honest with y'all. We are on chapters 73 to 76 of Thousand Autumns, Volume 3, and today has been a very stressful day at work. It's about to be back to school for me. It was very stressful today, and I was just sitting there going, when I reached the darkest depths of my psyche, I was like, tonight, when I get home, I'm going to read Thousand Autumns. And it's going to be like therapy because I need a good read to help me finish out the evening, even though you all are probably watching this early in the morning or in the afternoon, but your girl needs some therapy through Xin Chao, and that's exactly what we're going to get tonight. So, yes, we're looking at chapters 73 through 76. We're also finishing up the audio drama, although I did put it in my notes here. I have like my notes for volume 3. I did put my notes, finish season 2, episode 3 of the audio drama, and wait until next week for episode 4. So I'm presuming that we are going to have some of the content of this week is going to carry over into the audio drama for episode 4 next week, but that's okay. So yeah, we're in the thick of volume 3. I realize we're going to be finishing volume 3 by the end of this month, which is crazy to me. Crazy, but yeah, so we've got 4 more weeks essentially, including this week, of volume 3, and I'm not ready for volume 3 to be over because it's been so freaking good. But y'all have left some amazing comments. I've had so much fun reading your comments and talking about this series with y'all. I'm so glad we've been having a blast with season 3. It's been such a trip. But before we get started, I want to give a shout out over to our Patreon subscribers, because you all on Patreon are so amazing and wonderful. I really appreciate all of your support. So the commission tier as well as the philanthropy tier, they get shout outs in my video each week to thank them for all their generosity, and to thank everyone on Patreon, because you all are just amazing people for donating to this channel and donating to listening, throwing some bones as I ramble about these shows. I really appreciate that. So I want to give a shout out to Shimoyama, to username 123, to Sunspots, to Jason N, to Alex Cornejo, to Amor Facilica, as well as Be Happy, Dana, Destiny Marie, Diana Williams, Devorin, Damage3245, Chewy, Eric Ichu, Lyndon, Elfreya, Lady Lulz, Ghostly Turnip, James, Jessica Cullen, Nicholas, Poppy, Ian Davidson, Jack Witt, Violet Stardust, Rast, Rose Jennison, Murphy, Zachiel, Zero Anti-Zero, and Translucent Men. You all are amazing, as are all of you on Patreon. I really appreciate your support. All of my love. And thank you to everybody over on YouTube. I appreciate it. I know not everybody can donate to the Patreon. I get that, but I appreciate any support possible. So do me a favor real quick. If you are watching me week to week on Monday and you are not subscribed to this channel, just go check down this little button right below and see if you are subscribed. It is free. It helps my channel, and it also shows your support at no cost. So I appreciate that. But thank you. So with that being said, we're going to dive right into this. I poured some decaf coffee because today is too stressful for caffeine. We don't need any more of that. So, it is piping hot. I am ready to go. I am so excited. We're just going to dive right into this, shall we? We are going to start chapters 73 through 76 of 1,000 Autumns. And we're going to get started with that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. So we left off with Xin Chao at the Wei province capital, and Ching and Uncle Wu have said, be our guest, to Yan Wushi's beast. So here we go. Chapter 73, Tranquility. Okay. Ching was fairly young and had grown up in the Wei province. He was satisfied with his current life and had never seen the outside world, but with 2 extra people in the house, he naturally grew a little curious. Though Uncle had repeatedly warned him not to disturb them unless there was something important, he still took the chance to speak with Xin Chao sometimes when delivering their meals. Of course, he didn't dare strike up a conversation with Yan Wushi, not even if he were 10 times braver. Youths possessed an instinct akin to that of animals. He knew very well whom he could speak to and whom he shouldn't provoke. Today, like always, he knocked on the door of Xin Chao's room with a hot meal. There was no response, but Ching was used to this. After waking up at dawn, Xin Chao spent most of the day outside in the courtyard practicing the sword. Ching opened the door and entered, and he placed the chopsticks on the table before taking out the congee and the side dishes one by one. Footsteps sounded behind him, and Ching grinned as he looked back. "Oh, Shinlong Jun, you're back just in time!" Halfway through, though, he suddenly stopped, almost choking on his own saliva. He quickly clambered to his feet, his bright smile instantly transformed into a reserved and strained one. "Hello, master." "You look as if you didn't want to see me," Young WUSHI said, eyebrow raised. He walked in as composed as ever. He no longer wore the woman's outfit he had on when he arrived. Even the hair at his temples had returned to its original color. He was dressed in dark blue, the shadow of a smile on his face, poised and charming. But Ah-Ching inexplicably became afraid to the point he couldn't meet Young WUSHI's eyes. The casual air about him vanished as he quickly straightened his hands together. Ah-Ching wouldn't dare. Uncle Wu told Ah-Ching he must treat Master with the utmost respect and not offend him in any way. Young WUSHI's thin lips curled up slightly, and he sat down at the table, his posture laid back. "You're so reserved with me, yet so casual with Xin Chao. Clearly you must like him a lot." "Oh my God, are you for real?" Ah-Ching stammered. "Oh, Shenlongjun is a very kind person." Said Young WUSHI. "He is indeed kind to everyone. Even if he's being bothered or disturbed, he'd never show it on his face." That's so interesting to me because Young WUSHI is the polar opposite. Young WUSHI is always like coy and kind of gloomy and mean to everybody, and Xin Chao is nice to everybody, but Young WUSHI could not be more wrong. Oh my God, what a jealous man. Anyway, in Ah-Ching's mind, Xin Chao possessed practically all the qualities of perfection that he yearned for himself. A good temper, good looks, great martial arts, and he treated others kindly. It wasn't just Ah-Ching. Any youth around his age would adore and admire someone like that. In this house, Ah-Ching only had Uncle Wu for company, and he didn't even have playmates his own age. Now that Xin Chao was here, of course he wanted to get close and speak to him more. That was only natural. But when Young WUSHI said it, there was now a slight implication that it was strange. Hearing these words, Ah-Ching was both sad and disappointed, and he wondered if his coming to talk to Xin Chao every day was actually a bother to him. "That's what he wants you to think." The youth hung his head. He looked like a dispirited puppy. But Young WUSHI didn't feel sorry for him in the slightest. Instead, he poured fuel onto the flames with a final blow. "So you need to be more self-aware." "Yes," said Ah-Ching. His voice was downcast. He almost seemed on the verge of tears. Just then Xin Chao entered with his sword. A faint sheen of sweat shone on his face, but this only made his complexion seem fairer, giving him a faint glow. "What's wrong?" He looked at the two, one standing and one sitting. He had no idea what was going on. "Why are you in my room?" The second question was directed at Young WUSHI. Young WUSHI smiled. "Well, I smelled the aroma of food, so I came to steal some." Xin Chao frowned. "Didn't Ah-Ching bring yours to you?" "Food tastes better when it's someone else's," said Young WUSHI blithely. "Seeing another person's good appetite makes the food taste even better." Xin Chao didn't believe a word he said. He felt the situation was somewhat off, as if something had happened before he'd entered. "Ah-Ching?" Xin Chao saw his lowered head and gently asked, "What's wrong?" "Oh, nothing. Master and Shenlongjun should enjoy their meals. Once you're finished, I'll come clean up." And with that, he quickly turned and dashed out of the room. Out of the corner of his eye, Xin Chao saw the youth's eyes seemed a bit red. He became even more suspicious as he watched Ah-Ching's retreating back. He turned to Young WUSHI. "What did you say to him just now?" Young WUSHI was all smiles. "Ah, Chao, you sound like an old mother hen protecting her chicks. Don't forget that Ah-Ching is one of my people. I can treat him however I wish, and no one would bat an eye. He only approached you a little, and that was enough for you to suddenly show favor? We've traveled together for so long. Why did your attitude towards me never change?" If Xin Chao's expression earlier was very ordinary, then now he looked completely devoid of emotion. "It's not as though my attitude means anything to sect leader Yan." Oh my God! We're going to talk about it. Whenever his flaw was exposed and his personality shifted, Young WUSHI could feel it. It was like he'd grown another pair of eyes and was watching the outside, but he could only watch and able to control his body. So he could see how Xin Chao interacted with his other personalities. Oh, Xin Chao maintained some wariness towards even the sincerely gentle Ayan. There was one exception. Back in Rochong, Xiling, who shouldn't have awakened at the time, had used all his strength to seize control of his body and return to find Xin Chao. At the time, though Young WUSHI had been in deep slumber, he coolly watched as Xin Chao had smiled at Xiling, and he felt tremors within Xin Chao's heart. That man was tender-hearted by nature. If someone gave him one thing, he'd return it to them 10. If any other person went through what he had with Qinggong and Yui, even if they weren't left seething with hatred, it would at least make them disheartened and dispassionate, but Xin Chao instead cherished kindness even more, even if that kindness looked trivial in the eyes of others. That was why Xin Chao had started to show Xiling favor. Perhaps from that moment forward, Xin Chao had really begun to treat Xiling as his own person. Only when in front of Xiling did Xin Chao separate him from Yang Wuxi. However kind he was to the former, he'd be just as cold to the latter. The more he did so, the more intrigued Yang Wuxi became. In the past, he'd teased Xin Chao for two reasons. The first was that he thought this person was somewhat ridiculous for never learning his lesson after repeated betrayals, that everyone held evil within their hearts, and the only difference was how deeply they hid it. Xin Chao himself couldn't be an exception. He'd tried everything to draw out the malice within the depths of his heart. The second was that he wanted to implant the demonic core within Xin Chao, to see what would happen if one fused a demonic and Taoist core. And so, Xin Chao had been his guinea pig. But life was unpredictable. Xin Chao didn't walk in the direction that Yang Wuxi had set for him. Instead, he'd taken a completely different path. Though he'd experienced trial after trial, forced again and again to confront the treacheries of the human heart, this person had refused to change. He was even willing to treat Xiling, who had been born from Yang Wuxi himself, with such gentle amiability and sincerity. Should he call this kind of person foolish or stubborn? But in Yang Wuxi's eyes, whether it was Xiling or Yang Wuxi didn't matter. Good or evil, painful or wonderful, he alone should be special to Xin Chao. There was no need for some other random person to partake in that special regard. Sir! Hearing Xin Chao's words, Yang Wuxi laughed. Well, who said that it doesn't mean anything? It means a lot to me. If you were willing to split even 1/12 of what you gave Xiling to me, who knows how happy I'd be? Xin Chao turned a deaf ear. He lowered his head and focused on sipping his congee. Right now, as long as it wasn't Xiling, Xin Chao only listened to a small fraction of what Yang Wuxi said. And he'd pry open that tiny fraction, ponder and analyze it to avoid committing the same mistakes. It was really quite pathetic to fall into the same pit twice when you ought to have learned to avoid it. Though Xin Chao acknowledged that he wasn't a smart person, he wasn't that stupid either. We are going to talk about this. Oh my God. Okay. Seeing Xin Chao's lack of response, Yang Wuxi smiled and spoke no further. He picked up his congee and began to eat. For the two of them, the past few days were the most tranquil and peaceful they'd had yet. Certainly nothing like the hair-raising series of events they'd encountered in Rochong. Ever since they'd left Tu Yunhun, Xin Chao had had to deal with his ever-changing personalities, as Yang Wuxi's flaw hadn't been eliminated, while also keeping guard against their surroundings. Yang Wuxi had enemies all over the world, so Xin Chao hadn't been able to relax even for a moment. Only after entering this place did he start to feel at ease, and he could focus on cultivating the Zhuyong strategy's true qi. As for Yang Wuxi, though Xin Chao didn't make any detailed inquiries, he could see from his behavior that the man's personality was gradually stabilizing. It was rare to see a massive personality shift from him right after waking up. Most likely the contents of the silk piece had illuminated something to Yang Wuxi. With his abilities, it would only be a matter of time before he could patch the flaw in his demonic core, and once that happened, he'd rise to the next level with the Fanglin scriptures. It was possible his martial arts could progress so far that he would be unparalleled in the whole world. Even if he didn't achieve that, he wouldn't be far from it. At that point, even if the 5 martial experts joined up again, they might not be able to take down Yang Wuxi a second time. It was just a pity that Xiling. A faint melancholy flashed through Xin Chao's heart. He sighed to himself. Yang Wuxi suddenly asked, "Why do you show Ah Qing such favor?" "Oh my God, surely it's not because he resembles Xiling, and hence you're projecting onto him." "Sir, you are jealous! Oh my gosh!" When in front of him, Xin Chao was even more reticent than usual. He didn't need to speak with him, he wouldn't, but Yang Wuxi seemed to have guessed his mood, for he smiled. "You like him, but I find him a nuisance. If you don't tell me the reason, I'll have Uncle Wu drive him out after you leave." Xin Chao refused to play along. "Sec Leader Yan, you've always done as you please. Why would I have any say in what you choose to do?" Yang Wuxi laughed. "Well, all right, I won't drive him out. Well, can you please tell me? I'm pleading with you." A true man knew when to bend. Sec Leader Yan was unscrupulous in achieving his goals, and he never cared for anything like moral integrity. He was a mighty martial artist, a grandmaster, but he couldn't even say the words like, "I'm pleading." It didn't bother him, but as a listener, Xin Chao couldn't take it. Xin Chao could be coaxed but not cowed. Yang Wuxi had learned this long ago. In any case, wheedling a little wouldn't hurt him. Other people might think it damaged their dignity or integrity to act like this, but demonic practitioners place little importance on such things. To no surprise, though, Xin Chao looked slightly uncomfortable. He still said, "Ah Qing, is a little like the disciple I accepted. Young Wushi smiled. Why didn't I know that you accepted a disciple? Oh my God! You know him as well, Xin Chao said flatly. It's Bailong Monastery's Shi Wu. The moment he said this, he inevitably recalled the abbot and Chu Yi and how they died. As he blamed himself, any good humor he had for Yang Wushi vanished as well. All right, so he was picking at Xin Chao's scabs. Yang Wushi was highly intelligent and he wasn't crazy right now. Of course he could figure out what had happened. But he acted like he hadn't seen the refusal on Xin Chao's face, which was practically screaming, I don't want to talk to you anymore. Instead, he kept smiling and talking. I have indeed seen Shiwu before. It's true that his foundations and aptitude are both quite good. If he meets a wise master, he might see great accomplishments in the future. This level of shameless behavior. Xin Chao really had to hand it to him. He was just about to toss his guest out when the faint knocking sounded from outside the residence. There were 2 hallways and 1 courtyard between them and the front gates, but the martial artists had a fantastic hearing, so they both heard Ah Ching's I'm coming as he jogged over to open them. The Ji residence had always been quiet. They had few visitors. When Uncle Wu left to buy groceries, he usually took the back gates. He almost never left from one of the main gates. At once, the sense that something was amiss surged within Xin Chao and Yang Wushi. It was an indescribably mysterious feeling, almost like they'd read each other's minds. Only martial artists who had attained a certain level would have this reaction. Shanhei Tongbei was close by, and as Ah Ching opened the door, Xin Chao's hand was already on top of the sheath. Who is it? Ah Ching's voice drifted from afar. I hope you are all well, young benefactor. May I ask if this is the Shi residence? The moment he heard this voice, Xin Chao's expression shifted. Though he hadn't interacted much with this man, how could he fail to recognize him? But they'd been so careful the entire journey. Of course they couldn't have been completely flawless, but they'd done their best to leave no traces. How did Buddhist Master Zhu Ting find them so quickly? Could it be Chen Gong's doing? The 2 of them shared a glance. Yang Wushi's face was surprisingly composed. In fact, his expression had barely changed. Go hide first, Xin Chao said sternly. I'll meet with him. With their present cultivation, neither of them were Zhu Ting's match, but Zhu Ting's target wasn't Xin Chao, so even if he couldn't defeat him, Xin Chao could still escape. Yang Wushi raised an eyebrow. I fear it's too late. As soon as those words left his mouth, Zhu Ting's voice came from the courtyard. Sect Leader Yan is truly remarkable. This humble monk admires him greatly. In the blink of an eye, the man had moved from the gates to the courtyard outside their room. Ah Ching was still shouting up a storm, panting as he chased after them, but he couldn't even keep up with Zhu Ting's shadow, much less the edge of his robe. Very few people in the Zhanghu could achieve this level of speed, where, quote, the land seemed to shrink down to mere inches, and the dust couldn't even cling to their feet. The door to their room wasn't closed in the first place. When Xin Chao and Yang Wushi were standing, they could see the monk clothed in black had appeared. Yang Wushi sneered, So persistent, you bald old donkey! You're like an evil spirit. I haven't even repaid you for bringing a bunch of capering clowns to conspire against me that day. You sure have some nerve showing up here. Buddhist Master Zhu Ting brought his hands together in a greeting and said, This humble monk, too, did not expect Sect Leader Yan to be so powerful. You were ambushed by 5 great martial artists. Yet you managed to deceive everyone and come out safe and sound. Then he greeted Xin Chao as well. Taoist Master Shen is also here. What a coincidence. Buddhist Master Zhu Ting's voice was placid, without even a hint of anger. As for whether that what a coincidence contained any sarcasm, only he himself would know. Yang Wushi burst out laughing. Well, other than you bald donkey, Zhu Ting, everyone else was mediocre. You couldn't even kill me fighting 5-on-1, bunch of trash. And then you have the nerve to call yourselves experts? Zhu Ting, to think you'd be willing to lower yourself so far that you'd lump yourself in with them. Really, the longer you live, the more you regress. Buddhist Master Zhu Ting didn't grow the slightest bit angry. He looked at Yang Wushi with placid expression. Even his gaze held no hostility. The new generation shall replace the old. This humble monk is advanced in years, and sooner or later he will yield his spot to the more talented successors. With more time, Benefactor Duan and Benefactor Do may not remain inferior to this humble monk. Sect Leader Yan came back to life and is the same as ever. This humble monk must admit that is most admirable. Sect Leader Yan has to know as well. The further one walks along the martial path, the more difficult it is to meet an opponent of equal skill. If there were a choice, this humble monk, too, would rather drink tea and play Wei Qi with Sect Leader Yang, spar and exchange pointers to be friends, as well as opponents. However, extraordinary circumstances require extraordinary methods. Each day that sect leader Yan is here, you and Yang will behave without scruples and oppress Buddhism further. In order for Buddhism to flourish, this humble monk can only resort to such actions. It is not due to any personal grudges, so he asks for sect leader Yan's forgiveness. There was an implication within his words. Since he'd come here today, he would not leave empty-handed. There must have been a proper conclusion. May I ask the Grand Master, said Shinchao, how did you know that Yang WUSHI was here? Monks do not lie, said Zhuting. To tell the truth, this humble monk met Qinggong at Chang'an. As Heihuan's sect leader Shou had once injured my disciple, and Qinggong is as close to Heihuan's sect, I also wanted to obtain Yan Shao's whereabouts from him. Qinggong said he didn't know, and to extricate himself, he told me that sect leader Yan was still alive and that he'd even obtained a Zhuyang strategy scroll. Before he'd left, Qinggong had promised Shinchao not to divulge Yang WUSHI's whereabouts. But Shinchao had never placed much faith in that promise. Hearing this from Zhuting, he actually had the feeling that this was expected. But between Chang'an and Tuyuhun are many other provincial cities. It's impossible for Qinggong to know where we go or stop, correct? Said Zhuting. This humble monk searched for him an entire journey from Chang'an. I stopped in Wei Province and had planned on leaving tomorrow, but then I unexpectedly overheard a conversation between two people. One claimed to be a vendor who goes about selling vegetables to each household every day. There was one household that had inexplicably doubled their demand, so he was very happy. Shinchao sighed. The great master is truly meticulous and observant. If he could use his ability to arrest thieves and settle disputes, it would be enough to render the world free of injustices. Thank you for your praise, Taoist Master Shin. Today, this humble monk has taken the liberty to visit due to sect leader Yan. Taoist Master Shin is an unrelated party, so I ask you not to involve yourself, lest you be met with some kind of accidental injury. What a coincidence, Shinchao said. The great master wishes to kill him, but I wish to protect him. Buddhist Master Zhuting's face betrayed a trace of astonishment. As far as this humble monk knows, the demonic and Taoist sects have never been this close. As sect leader Yan has time and again shown Taoist Master Shin much ingratitude, repaying your kindness with evil, why would Taoist Master Shin still try to protect him? It's as the Grand Master says, said Shinchao, each day that he's there. You and Yang will remain safe and sound. Looking at all the nations, Qi is already gone. Only the two kingdoms of Zhou and Qin can be called strong, but southern Qin is protected by the Confucians, so there's no room for Buddhism there. The great master's continuous attempts to kill Yan WUSHI are paving the way for the Gok Turks to encroach on the Central Plains, are they not? Zhuting gave a chant. Is Taoist Master Shin saying that he's also on the Lord of Zhou's side? Correct, said Shinchao. Zhuting gave a slight sigh. Then it seems today this humble monk must pass through Taoist Master Shin first. Oh my God! With his final word fell, his golden staff lightly struck the dark stone tiles beneath them, and a heavy sound seemed to explode in Shinchao's ears. At the same time, Shanhei Tongbei exited its sheath with a clang. Shinchao sprang up and sword and staff met in midair. In an instant, flashes of light and shadow interweaved, while internal energies spread outward from their points of contact. Anyone like Ah Ching without any martial arts or foundations was instantly blasted by the shock waves. He cried out, his ears ringing with pain, and he was forced to stumble back. Only after hiding behind the wall did he feel a little bit better. Shinchao had thought that Yan WUSHI, being skilled at assessing situations, who possessed little of the burdens of the usual grandmaster, would see no reason to involve himself. Surely upon seeing Shinchao obstructing Zhuting, he'd turn around and leave first. But instead, even after Shinchao had exchanged several blows with Zhuting, he saw Yan WUSHI still standing motionless in place out of the corner of his eye. Why aren't you leaving? Shinchao shouted enraged. Don't just stand there! Ah Chao calmed down. I do want to leave, but you should ask that bald old donkey if he'll let me. The corners of Yan WUSHI's lips curled up a little, but his eyes weren't smiling in the slightest. As if in response to his words, two young monks appeared at the east and the west, both bareheaded and dressed in black monks' robes, standing upon the roof tiles. This humble monk is Lian Sheng. This humble monk is Lian Mi. The two of them said in unison, We greet sect leader Yan. Oh, bitch! Okay! Okay! Woo! Oh, buddy, we have so much to talk about. It's only the first chapter. Chapter 74, Buddhist Master Zhu Ting. The reason Buddhist Master Zhu Ting could rank within the world's top 3 was definitely not because he was good at calling over friends to help him ambush his opponents, but because he was indeed very strong. Xin Chao had never doubted this. The moment Buddhist Master Zhu Ting had appeared, he'd already foreseen that there would be a fierce battle today. Buddhist Master Zhu Ting wasn't much younger than Qi Fengge, but once a martial artist achieved a certain echelon, their appearance would be preserved. Their rate of aging would be slower than an ordinary person's. Wow, okay! So when Qi Fengge had passed, he only looked around 30 or 40. No one would have guessed that his real age had already been pushing 100. So when the average person looked at Buddhist Master Zhu Ting's handsome face, if it weren't for his complete lack of hair, they definitely would take him as a young master of a rich family. However, he was calm and composed, his beautiful appearance dignified. There was no hint of the secular world upon him. Xin Chao, too, carried an immortal, lofty indifference to material gain, but he also had a very tender heart. Whenever he saw the young or the weak, he'd want to reach out and help them. Hence, he sometimes would even seem more sentimental than most. When comparing him to Zhu Ting, Taoist against Buddhist, Zhu Ting was like a Buddha statue within a temple, mouth and heart as hard as iron, lacking even a trace of mercy. Xin Chao, on the other hand, was more like an azure pond, tranquil in appearance, but when a swan so much as skimmed the surface, it'd leave many sentimental ripples in its wake. The first of the Akala seals, form is emptiness. The countless forms of physical phenomena are layer upon layer of false embellishments. The common people cannot recognize this, so they are easily trapped within, unable to free themselves. Only by maintaining a heart as clear as a glaze can one forsake the falsehoods for truth and disregard Mara, remaining true to oneself. The seals came from all directions, surrounding Xin Chao with layers upon layers of palm strikes. As Zhu Ting's snow-white, flawless right hand swelled infinitely, they became like the seals of Vajrapani, capable of felling monsters and demons, unavoidable and inescapable. But Xin Chao remained firmly in place, his left hand behind his back, while he gave his right a slight flick. Shane Tongbei trembled at his side, its song like a weeping, an ode or a cry drawn out and remote. It cleaved through the massive seals, glimpsing the truth from the countless afterimages, striking directly at Zhu Ting's right hand. Zhu Ting shifted from an open palm to a sweeping gesture. His fingertips were like willow leaves in the wind, so graceful and beautiful it was impossible to look away. When compared with the relentless momentum of his previous attack, it was as if icy winds over acres of frozen snowy fields had transformed into a river in spring. Reflecting the clouds suspended high in the boundless sky, there were geese and orioles, peach blossoms dangling over the water, indescribably gracious and wondrous. Okay. Damn. Just all this description with all the battle stuff is like, amazing. I wore the right shirt for today. We could say that. Oh, but Xin Chao didn't press this advantage. He immediately withdrew and retreated instead. Wherever Zhu Ting's palm brushed, his true qi overflowing, the stones on the floor began to crack and splinter. Even Ah Ching, several yards away, could feel a strange pain on his face, like the sharp blade was scraping up against it. Using a heaven stretches across the rainbows, a rainbow stretches across the heavens, Xin Chao drifted like floating dust as he swept back several yards. Then he suddenly leapt up again. Suspended upside down in midair, he and his sword transformed into a band of white silk. His sword chi pouring down from above like a cascade grounded in the heavens. Its spray akin to thousands of snow lions bounding forth. The descriptions, y'all! Accompanying it was a thundering tempest. The blade point pierced forth with an oppressive momentum, unstoppable in its advance. This series of moves had taken place in the twinkling of an eye. Zhu Ting's face, normally as still as deep water and moved by waves, finally betrayed a trace of astonishment. Like a cyclone, the sword chi engulfed him from above. At that moment, Zhu Ting had a number of options available to him, but breaking out of the sword chi wasn't one of them. It whirled a few inches away, and when he raised his left hand, the golden staff met with the sword chi as they both exploded with a thunderous roar. Their breaths seemed to freeze, leaving both unable to advance even an inch. Instead, they were blasted away, sending both men reeling back several steps. It's only been several months, and yet Taoist Master Shin's martial arts seem to have advanced another level. This is truly a commendable feat. Buddhist Master Zhu Ting's expression was grave. He no longer spared any attention for Lian Shang and Lian Mei's situation, but instead devoted all of his focus on Xin Chao. But this wasn't good news for Xin Chao. Though he had indeed made progress, that didn't mean that Zhu Ting had been idle. For a martial artist grandmaster like Buddhist Master Zhu Ting, progressing further was very difficult, but he could still practice martial arts and he could still attain further mental enlightenment. The more honed and perfected one's state of mind was, the more formidable their martial arts would become. Xin Chao had concluded this previously. Before being injured, he could have fought Guan Lengsong, Duan Wenyang, and the others to a draw. But if it were Buddhist Master Zhu Ting, he would find himself lacking. Therefore, in his present state, he was sure at a disadvantage. He'd rebuilt his body using the might of the Zhuyang strategy, and now his foundations integrated the strengths of the three schools. One could say the foundations of his future house would be several times stronger than other people's. But this didn't mean that he could build the house itself any faster. Xin Chao had already achieved the echelon of sword heart, and it was merely a step away from sword spirit, but his internal energy was only 7/10 of where it had been. He was completely unable to use his sword heart to the fullest. And against an expert like Zhu Ting, there was absolutely no chance for a fluke. Therefore, Xin Chao couldn't allow the other man to discover these details, for if he did, that would mean no one on the scene could stop Zhu Ting. Xin Chao let his blade hang as he stood in place. In the end, he said slowly, "The Buddhist sects do not bear any grudges against Huan Yu's sect, and the great master has already killed sect leader Yan once. So why must he continue pursuing him relentlessly? Even if there is no sect leader Yan, no Huan Yu sect, as long as Yuan Yang is emperor, there will be other powers that will support him as well. The great master is farsighted and wise. So he must understand this, correct?" On the other end, Yang Wushi was fighting 2 against 1, but he took the time to say, "Ah, Chao, it must be thanks to my venerable self, but your mouth has really improved. You've even left that bald old donkey speechless. I'm sure he's so ashamed he'll torment you further out of rage." Oh my god. Before, even 10 Lian Shangs and 10 Lian Meis wouldn't be Yang Wushi's match, let alone one of each. However, that couldn't be the case now. Zhu Ting knew this too, and that's why he'd brought his disciples. Even if Lian Shang and Lian Mei couldn't bring down Yang Wushi this time, they could still stall him. Zhu Ting saw through Xin Chao's intentions. He shook his head and said, "Taoist Master Xin should know that this concerns the survival of Buddhism. There is no point in speaking any further. Today, this humble monk came here for sect leader Yan alone. If Taoist Master Xin is willing to withdraw and not involve himself, this humble monk will be infinitely grateful." This man was truly interesting. Though he held the upper hand, he was still so courteous to Xin Chao, showing no trace of annoyance or anger. He was as indifferent as a light breeze. He truly possessed the demeanor of a grandmaster. Were the two of them not firmly opposed to each other, Xin Chao would much rather sit down to discuss theory with him than face him like this. Swords drawn and bows knocked, the sparks of war imminent. But Yan Wushi seemed to be rather displeased with Xin Chao's new view of Buddhist Master Zhu Ting. As if determined to break his perception of him, he said, "Ah, Chao, that question was really too foolish. How could the old bald donkey not know that killing Yuan Yang is the solution to all his problems? He pursues me relentlessly because Buddhism needs to maintain its just and honorable image, which can't be stained with the crime of regicide. Even if they want to kill him, they must send someone else to do it, thereby keeping his own hands clean and free of the slightest speck of dust. Isn't that right, bald old donkey?" Zhu Ting had no interest in wasting words on him. He chanted a quiet Amitabha and then coolly said, "Taoist Master Xin is unwilling to stand down. He insists on protecting Yang Wushi to the end. Therefore, this humble monk can only commit this offense." As he spoke, he took but a single step, yet he was already in front of Xin Chao. A jade chime accompanied him, its twinkling sweet and unending, and his golden staff flitted towards Xin Chao's chest. His movements were very slow to the point that others could see every detail, yet somehow at the same time, so terrifyingly fast there was no time to react. Xin Chao realized with a shock that his own martial abilities were simply too inferior. He could predict where Zhu Ting's hands were going, but his body still couldn't respond soon enough. By the time he'd raised his sword, a heavy blow had struck him on the chest. Pain rapidly spread from that point, and Xin Chao couldn't stop himself from flying backwards, his throat gurgling with the salty, sweet taste. After his momentary daze, he spat out a huge mouthful of blood and slammed heavily into a colonnade pillar. But Xin Chao didn't pause for even an instant. Using the pillar, his sword glare became as moonlight entering the water, accompanying the ebb and flow of the river tides. A split second later, its light grew lustrous and brilliant, overlapping like layers upon layers of splendid brocade, before surging towards Buddhist Master Zhu Ting. Even with Zhu Ting's cultivation, for a moment, he was unable to distinguish man from sword. Meanwhile, Lian Shang and Lian Mei worked in tandem. They seemed to understand each other naturally, their thoughts and actions in perfect sync. Yang Wushi's martial prowess was far below that of his past self, and he'd yet to finish patching the flaw in his demonic core. There'd always be some leeway with his attacks, which the pair could take advantage of. With one on offense and one on defense, Lian Shang and Lian Mei encircled Yang Wushi. They didn't attempt to kill him, but they moved seamlessly together like yin and yang with no openings to speak of. It was obvious they'd received Zhu Ting's instructions beforehand. They knew their own strength. Even if Yang Wushi's martial abilities had greatly diminished, killing him would be quite difficult. So they only sought to stall Yang Wushi and waiting for Zhu Ting to defeat Shen Chao, and then he could come and assist them. Unfortunately, after all that waiting and having exchanged several hundred blows in the meantime, both of their foreheads shone with sweat. Zhu Ting was still being held up by Shen Chao, completely unable to disengage. Lian Shang grew anxious. As his Shidi Lian Mei attacked Yang Wushi, he couldn't resist glancing over at his Shizun. And with just this glance, the situation suddenly changed. Yang Wushi had been on the defensive the entire time, but now he suddenly attacked. Using his finger as a sword, he struck at the center of Lian Mei's palm. Lian Mei had witnessed Yang Wushi's unimpressive showing earlier and ended up underestimating him despite himself, thinking that this was all the Huan Yu sect leader amounted to. And yet just as this thought had arose, he felt a stabbing pain within his palm, as if a scalding iron rod had pierced through it. He couldn't help but scream, reeling back reflexively. A glance at his palm showed that a bloody hole had been gored through it, and flesh and blood gurgled out. He could faintly see the muscles and white bones within. Lian Shang heard the noises and quickly turned back. He couldn't help but be shocked with what he saw, but before he could react, a sword glare suddenly leapt towards his face. "Go!" yelled Shen Chao. With that one word, he grabbed Yang Wushi's arm and swept towards the southeast. Shen Chao dared not take Zhu Ting lightly. He pushed a rainbow stretches across the heavens to the utmost. Other people would have seen Shen Chao and Yang Wushi drag behind him, transform into two afterimages on the wind. But still Shen Chao was worried it wasn't enough. Terrified Zhu Ting could catch up to them, he soared forward without stopping, the trees on the either side becoming mere shadows as they streaked by him at top speed. He never slowed down in the slightest. Though he didn't look back, Shen Chao could clearly sense a menacing presence constantly behind them, both near and far as it followed, like a blade against his back. It was obviously Zhu Ting giving chase, unwilling to give up. Even if Shen Chao were a step further or a step faster, he couldn't shake Zhu Ting off so quickly. Shen Chao hauled Yang Wushi outside the city and then bounded towards Gozhan Mountain next to the Wei province. At the foot of the mountain was a dense forest, easy to hide in, but Yang Wushi said, "Go up the mountain." Shen Chao didn't give it a further thought. He charged up the mountain without stopping. It was early spring. The frozen rivers had thawed. Hundreds of flowers were in bloom. The mountains were filled with birdsong. Everything was brimming with life. The forest trees twisted and snarled. The mountain rocks were craggy, the mountain path steep. There was no good foothold. Standing at the halfway point and looking down, the pencil-straight cliff walls, the curling clouds and mist accentuated the precipitous nature even further. Around halfway up the mountain, Shen Chao discovered a cave obscured by a thicket. It was dark and winding on the inside, with a small stream that gurgled through it. The cave was quite deep. After the two of them entered, they walked many yards before it opened up, becoming bright and spacious. The stone walls were smooth and glossy, the area about the size of a wealthy family's main hall. Looking upward, Shen Chao realized there was no rocky ceiling overhead. The sunlight spilled through the gaps within the complex weave of branches, dappling the dead leaves by their feet. "Here is fine," said Yang Wushi. "Zhu Ting would only think that we'd hide within the mountain's forests. He absolutely would not expect us to climb up here." Shen Chao finally relaxed the guard he'd kept raised. But what followed wasn't the relief of relaxation, but rather a giant mouthful of blood as he bent over. This was from the internal injuries he sustained during the battle with Zhu Ting. When he fled with Yang Wushi, his chest had begun to throb unbearably, but he'd been afraid that the opening his mouth would cause him to lose his breath, with his last push with it, so he hadn't even spoken until now. Not many people could withstand a strike from one of the three best grandmasters in the world. Shen Chao's martial strength had yet to fully recover, and yet he'd been able to battle Zhu Ting for such a long period of time and then escape from him with Yang Wushi in tow. It was all thanks to his still immature echelon of sword heart. But applying an echelon upon one's sword wasn't something that could be sustained endlessly, unlike internal energy or true chi. Even before their battle, Shen Chao had never thought about battling or fighting Buddhist Master Zhu Ting to the bitter end. He'd already been prepared to retreat at any time. Escape from right beneath Buddhist Master Zhuting's nose was no easy task, especially while carrying a load, but Xin Chao had pulled it off. Though the two of them hadn't discussed the idea of retreating in any depth, it was obvious that Yang Wuxi had held similar thoughts on the matter. So they'd been able to achieve a tacit understanding and consensus despite exchanging no words. With this mouthful of blood, Xin Chao's head swam and his vision blurred. He barely had the strength to stand. Overcome by his overtaxed martial strength and internal injuries, his sight faded and his ears rang as he collapsed forward. Yang Wuxi caught him without hesitation. He even smiled and said, "Ah, Chao, I know you like me, but you don't have to throw yourself into my arms like this." His voice was lacking in vitality. It was obvious he'd also been injured. But that did absolutely nothing to diminish the wanton teasing in his voice and tone. As soon as he said this, Xin Chao hacked up another huge mouthful of blood. Practically half his body weight was now leaning on the crook of Yang Wuxi's elbow. His face stark white as if he was about to breathe his last. Yang Wuxi clicked his tongue once. "Surely you're not coughing up blood in anger from just this." Of course, Xin Chao wasn't coughing up blood out of anger, but he didn't have the strength to retort. He only said weakly, "Now that we're gone, what will happen to Uncle Wu and Ah Ching?" "Zhuting is not Song Jijing," said Yang Wuxi. "He still needs to uphold Buddhism's image, and besides, he knows that he can't threaten me with those two anyway. Naturally, he won't do anything pointless." Xin Chao nodded. Blood still stained his lips, making their cold paleness starker and the crimson more vivid. Yang Wuxi used his thumb to wipe it away. There was a muffled, unbearable pain in Xin Chao's chest. Even his breathing was shallow. He was completely unable to focus his energies on anything around him. His senses had become sluggish as well, and he was caught off guard when Yang Wuxi shoved something small into his mouth and covered it with his hand, preventing Xin Chao from spitting it out. His eyes widened, but his body had already performed the reasonable reaction of swallowing the object. His throat was so dry and painful he almost choked to death. He began coughing violently, which aggravated his internal injuries, and even his eyes grew a little moist. Jade Sistanch. Chapter 75, Dreamscape. "Who told you this was Jade Sistanch?" said Yang Wuxi deliberately. "It's obviously poison." Despite his internal injuries, which left him without even the strength to speak, Xin Chao could still differentiate poison and medicine. "The Jade Sistanch can only heal external injuries. It won't be very effective on me." The strike from Zhuting had broken one of his ribs. Oh, so he knows that it's medicine. He's being... Oh my god, Yang Wuxi. Yang Wuxi! Yang Wuxi! Oh my god! The strike from Zhuting had broken one of his ribs. Now even the rise and fall of his chest was accompanied by a stabbing pain. But to martial artists, this kind of external injury was fairly common. Xin Chao had suffered injuries too numerous to count, especially in his duel with Kunye, so something like a broken rib wasn't even worth mentioning. The internal injuries were more troubling. "Then spit it out," Yang Wuxi countered lazily. It was already inside Xin Chao's stomach. How could he spit it out? Reality once again proved that arguing with Yang Wuxi was completely pointless. Xin Chao simply closed his mouth, and after a while, he drifted off. He didn't sleep for long. Even if his eyes were closed, his body remained in a vigilant state, suspended between dreams and consciousness. He woke when it was around just past noon. Looking around, Yang Wuxi was nowhere to be found. A thought surfaced in Xin Chao's mind. Had Yang Wuxi left by himself? He sat up against the wall with great effort, doing his best not to aggravate his wound. Moist vines hung down from overhead, and water droplets fell onto his cheek, bringing a touch of icy coldness. The stabbing pain in his chest had transformed into a dull ache. It was clear the Jade Sistanch had still had some effect. Xin Chao sat cross-legged, circulating his injury to heal his injuries. After one full revolution, his true chi had flowed through his entire body, causing his limbs and bones to tingle with a warm numbness. Even the state of his internal injuries seemed to have improved. When he opened his eyes, faint footsteps sounded from the narrow passage leading to the cavern entrance. Xin Chao didn't rise, having already identified who the person was from the cadence of those steps. Ever since his eyes had deteriorated, he purposely honed in his hearing, even contemplating the slight differences in each person's footfalls. Over time, his ears had grown quite a bit sharper than those of the average martial artist. Sure enough, Yang Wuxi walked in carrying a skewer of sparrows. "You went out?" asked Xin Chao. "Mm-hmm," said Yang Wuxi. "Lend me Shang He Tombe for a moment." Xin Chao naturally didn't think that Yang Wuxi would use it to kill him, so he passed the sword he always kept close while asking, "You didn't encounter Zhu Ting outside, did you?" The moment he did this, he noticed that Yang Wuxi was using his sword to remove the sparrow's feathers. "What are you doing?" he snapped. Surprised, Yang Wuxi countered, "Do you eat sparrows with their feathers?" Xin Chao's chi and blood roiled. He almost spat out a mouthful of blood. "That's the Shanhei Tongbei Shizun left to me!" Yang Wuxi was unfazed. "Why is Ah Chao getting so angry? Careful, you'll cough up more blood. Chi Fengge is practically a god in your eyes, but he still had to eat. Perhaps he used this to shave behind your back. How would you know?" As he talked, the feathers of several sparrows had already been scraped clean. Using a long sword for a dagger's job was no simple task, and yet Yang Wuxi handled it with ease. He then lowered the sword into the stream, washing off the sparrow feathers on the surface, before sheathing it and handing it back to Xin Chao. He even used his chilled hands to stroke Xin Chao's cheek. "All right, Chi Fengge has been dead for ages. Even if you do use it to shave, it's not like he can pop out and yell at you. The sword exists within the heart, not outside your body. Only you'd treasure it this much. Look at you, I broke his Junji Buchi, but he switched to a new sword without a word. You don't see him running to Chi Fengge's grave to wail and bawl." Xin Chao was so furious. He didn't want to speak to him anymore. It was a good thing he'd circulated his chi earlier, or he really would have coughed up blood. Yang Wuxi, on the other hand, seemed to be in a good mood. He found a patch of dry ground, piled up some dead leaves and twigs, and then lit it with a fire starter and began roasting the skewer of sparrows. Soon the fragrance of searing meat fanned out. He turned to look at Xin Chao, whose eyes were closed as he circulated his chi. His profile was like white jade, turning gentle and radiant beneath the sunlight. His blue collar enclosed the beautiful line of his neck, causing that near austere aloofness to betray a hint of imperceptible warmth. Yang Wuxi had seen countless beauties in his life. There had been no lack of untouchable types among them, like flowers growing on the highest peaks, but not one had been like the man before him now. Resembling a god or a Buddha with his eyes closed, yet brimming with the tenderness of the mortal world when his eyes were open. Just as he thought this, Xin Chao opened his eyes. "Once night comes, I'll return to check on Uncle Wu and Ah Ching." Yang Wuxi nonchalantly pulled the sparrows off the branch one by one. "As I already said, Zhu Ting needs to maintain the glorious image of Buddhism, so he can't lay his hands on them openly. The moment Zhu Ting showed up, that residence was compromised. Wu Mi knows how to deal with this." By nature, he was a cold and indifferent person who rarely took the fates of others to hearts. In his eyes, Wu Mi belonged to the Huan Yu sect, so dying for Huan Yu sect was a proper ending for him. As for Ah Ching, Yang Wuxi would never afford him the slightest hint of sympathy or compassion. However, he knew very well the kind of person Xin Chao was. Even if he said any of this, the man would immediately run back to check. In the past, Yang Wuxi would have stood by and watched, but today, he chose instead to resolve Xin Chao's doubts. "Do you know why I brought back 6 sparrows?" asked Yang Wuxi. Xin Chao started. He didn't understand why Yang Wuxi would suddenly ask this. Thinking there was some deeper meaning to it, he tilted his head a little and began to ponder it seriously. Yang Wuxi peeled off a piece of bark from somewhere and then placed a roasted sparrow on the tip. On top, as Xin Chao looked at them, he immediately found it difficult to keep his mouth from twitching. Upon that piece of bark, 6 sparrows were neatly laid out, with 1 in the center and 5 arranged evenly around it. This dish is called plum blossom sparrows. Xin Chao bit his tongue. "You came up with that name yourself, didn't you? You have to eat the one in the center first before you eat the ones on the outside." "Why?" "Because it looks better that way. If you eat the ones on the outside first, the plum blossom will be ruined." Xin Chao was speechless. Suspecting that one of Yang Wuxi's episodes was flaring up again, he couldn't help but shoot him a glance of concern. Yang Wuxi's expression remained composed. He even smiled at him and said gently, "Ah Chao, this is a token of my appreciation. Do you really have the heart to waste it?" Xin Chao had never expected gratitude for risking his life to save Yang Wuxi, but this method of thanking someone was really too strange. But when he considered Yang Wuxi's way of doing things, Xin Chao thought him conjuring up some pear blossom sparrows or peach blossom sparrows next time would be too much of a surprise either. After all, not everyone would be bored enough to line up every single green bean on their plate while they were enjoying a meal at a tavern. I think he did that in the Donghua, though. Xin Chao dithered for a moment before finally picking up the sparrow in the center and taking a bite. Apart from feeling it being unsalted, the taste was quite decent. How are your injuries? Asked Shin Chao. Yang Wuxi smiled. You'll know it if you feel it. As he talked, he extended his wrist to Shin Chao without the slightest hesitation. The acupoint upon the wrist was also one of the gates of life. Regardless of martial prowess, anyone who grasped the ear could not afford to make any rash moments. It wouldn't have been out of the ordinary for Ji Ling to do something like this, but Shin Chao knew it wasn't him. Traditionally used to refer to an important acupoint on the lower back, here it means one of the series of vital acupoints that connects to the owner's life. He repressed the strange feelings in his heart and then placed his hand over Yang Wushi's wrist. After a moment of silence, he said, You still have some internal injuries, but they're not serious. 1 or 2 days of rest should be enough. This mountain is cold, damp, and inconvenient, and hiding for a couple days is fine, but we can't remain here much longer. What are your plans? Head to Hanzhong first, and then Chang'an, said Yang Wuxi. Shin Chao was taken aback. That would mean they have traveled in a circle. I thought that you'd go straight to Chang'an, said Shin Chao. After entering Chang'an, you'd have Huan Yusek's influence and the Lord of Zhou's protection. Then Zhu Ting wouldn't dare do anything rash. Yang Wuxi said, Since Zhu Ting already knows I'm alive, even if the others don't yet, they will in a few days. If you thought of returning to Chang'an, they definitely have thought of it as well. The road we'd have to take from here to Chang'an will definitely be full of countless ambushes and hurdles. Shin Chao thought of this as much. Yang Wuxi sneered. Zhu Ting and the rest wanted to kill me, but did you really think I was their only target? Their true target would be the Lord of Zhou. Correct, said Yang Wuxi. As I said before, the Buddhists wish to expand their influence, which can only be done through a ruler, so they absolutely must not stain their hands with regicide. Otherwise, even if Yuan Yang is gone, regardless of who the future emperor is, they won't uplift Buddhism. And if they had the likes of the Gok Turks, Liu Guild, or Fajing sect do it, not only would the action be seen as unjustified and unreasonable, it would also bring them countless troubles. It'd be faster to let the people close to Yuan Yang take action. Yang Wuxi's words were like a flash of lightning. They illuminated something that had never occurred to Shin Chao. The Empress Lady Ashina is a Gok Turk. My, what a quick learner you are, teased Yang Wuxi. Lady Ashina has been neglected by Yuan Yang for a long time. Naturally, she'd be willing to help Duan Wenyang to add fuel to the fire. There's also the Crown Prince. He hates work and loves play. He'd spend all his day amusing himself and never strives for improvement. The Emperor has long been dissatisfied with him, and the Crown Prince knows this as well. If he doesn't act first before his father decides to dispose him, then he won't be able to keep his seat as Crown Prince. Shin Chao was shocked, and after a long pause, he finally said, The Crown Prince is his son. He wouldn't go that far. Halfway through this sentence, he found himself unable to continue. Shin Chao suddenly thought of Yui. Could the affection they shared be much less than familial bond between the Emperor and the Crown Prince? But Yui had still mercilessly poisoned him with joyful reunion. Royal families had always been famed for their ruthlessness. The Crown Prince might really be capable of patricide. Yang Wuxi sighed. Ah, Chao, you're not stupid, but your tender heart holds you back. You're always so optimistic when it comes to interpersonal matters, and you never suspect a dark side to them. What would you do if I weren't here? If you weren't here, my days would definitely be 100 times more smoothly, Shin Chao almost blurted out. But he was a kind and upright gentleman, so he couldn't say such things. Instead, he turned his attention back to the original topic. Following their conjectures, it seemed that this game of chess was truly fraught with danger, and everything was deeply intertwined. After what had happened to Yang Wuxi, Huan Yu's sect was without a leader. The 2 other demonic sects would be unable to contain themselves and come looking for trouble. Beyond Yanmei would be pressed to take care of himself and was sure to overlook things on Yuan Yang's end. The Empress was his wife and the Crown Prince was his son. No matter how capable Beyond Yanmei was, he couldn't accompany the Emperor at all times. If they wanted to do something to him, that something would indeed be simpler and easier to pull off than having martial artists assassinate him. Shin Chao coughed twice. Then what of Hongzhong? The Prince of Qi, Yuan Zhan, lives in Hongzhong. He also has some troops. We'll go there first to scope out the situation and then head to Chang'an. Shin Chao understood. Yang Wuxi thought that Yuan Yang's situation didn't look too good, so he was planning out a path of retreat in advance. The Crown Prince was Buddhist and had no fondness for Huan Yu's sect, nor Yang Wuxi for Prince. So he decided to bet on Yuan Zhan. Even before now, Huan Yu's sect must have invested a great deal of time into him. Xu Ting thought that they'd head to Chang'an, and everyone else would think so too. They probably would not suspect they'd instead go to Hanzhong. The crafty hare keeps 3 burrows. No one understood this concept better than Yang Wuxi. Night seemed to come quicker in the mountains. As the sun set in the west, the densely packed canopy of leaves above them absorbed the last rays of sunlight. Inside the cave, the firewood crackled, finally driving away the spring night's chill. Xin Chao didn't circulate his qi. Instead, he slept. He'd been wounded quite seriously in the battle with Xu Ting. Even with the Zhiyong strategy's true qi protecting him, he was still a flesh and blood mortal, and at present there was a fair gap between him and Xu Ting. It was impossible for his injuries to heal in a couple days. At night he burned with fever, his forehead boiling hot as he descended into a nightmare. His dreams were fantastical and bizarre, with all sorts of people making their appearances. Xin Chao was trapped in this illusion, unable to free himself. The Shizun he admired the most was holding Shanhe Tongbei, which was also covered in feathers. He asked Ah Chao why he'd used the sword to clean away feathers, and Xin Chao said hurt, well, Shizun Yang Wuxi did it. Qifengge gripped Xin Chao's chin and held the sword up to his face. What else do you see here? Xin Chao stared blankly, then discovered that the blade was covered in tiny black hairs, and he immediately blurted, Shizun, do you really use Shanhe Tongbei to shave? Nonsense, said Qifengge angrily. You clearly took this master's sword to play with, and now you're blaming someone else. It was only yesterday I taught you the character for honesty. You should know better, but now you've gone and done this. It seems you must be punished. Frightened, Xin Chao subconsciously blurted out, this disciple knows he was wrong. But Qifengge didn't seem to have heard him admit his wrongdoings. Instead, he ordered him to lie down, and then he picked up a large rock and placed it on top of him. Since you are wrong, you must be punished. Stay here like this. You're not allowed to stand unless this master says so. Xin Chao didn't know how his master had come up with such a bizarre punishment. His chest felt both stifled and painful from the pressure, and he could barely breathe. He couldn't help but hurriedly plead, Shizun, please move the stone away. But Qifengge turned a deaf ear before turning around and leaving. He grew further and further away until he finally vanished without a trace. This disciple is wrong. Shizun, don't go. Xin Chao's eyes were shut, his eyebrows tightly knitted. My chest hurts. Hearing his murmurs, Yang Wuxi opened up his eyes and looked down at him. Beneath the firelight, he saw the faint tear tracks at the corner of his eyes. He'd actually cried within his dream. Yang Wuxi reached out and touched the wet stains. He thought the fresh tears would be warm, but instead they were ice cold. This person must have been pampered and doted on as a child. Otherwise, he couldn't have developed such a soft and tender heart. As Yang Wuxi thought about this, he heard Xin Chao, who was in some fretful dream, suddenly mutter 2 words. Xiling. Yang Wuxi startled, and then a strange cruelty rose to his face, as if a mask had suddenly broken. Very quickly, all sorts of emotions flashed across his face. Some savage, some estranged, some gentle, as though tens of thousands of faces were fighting for dominance, wanting to take control of his expression. It was a chilling sight. The qi within his body began to rampage, much like the warning signs for the countless times he'd entered qi deviation. Yang Wuxi quickly shut his eyes. After a moment, he opened them again, reaching down to carefully stroke Xin Chao's cheek. Then his hand meandered back to grasp his nape, pulling him up a little. Finally, he lowered his own head and swallowed each of those incessant murmurs, taking them into his mouth. Chapter 76. Xiling has passed. Dazed and groggy, Xin Chao felt like there was a bowstring stretched taut in his mind, clamoring for him to wake up. But his eyelids were incredibly heavy. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't pry them open. And from over his lips came a strange warmth. It felt like something was violently invading. He struggled for a while, a feeble moan escaping his mouth, before he finally forced his eyes open. Having burned for the night, half the night, the fire gradually dimmed, and someone was holding him in their arms, their bodies only separated by a thin layer of clothing. The entire situation caused a sort of indolence to seep forth from his bones, making him wish to just sink into slumber and sleep until the end of time. Xin Chao suddenly felt a little breathless. However, this stifling sensation originated not from his chest wound, but from his nose and his mouth. To think The mighty sect leader of Zhandu Mountain has even forgotten how to breathe. If word gets out, people would laugh themselves to death, wouldn't they? A mocking voice drifted over, sounding both near and yet far, but in truth, it had been spoken next to his ear. Their faces were pressed together, and the other man's tongue was currently pulling out from his own slightly opened mouth. He even pressed a leisurely kiss to Xin Chao's lips before finally putting some distance between them. Then he pinched Xin Chao's cheeks and tugged. Did you go stupid? A shred of reason finally returned to that bewildered gaze, and Xin Chao slapped Yang Wuxi. The latter yelped and retreated. Well, Ah Chao, it's me, Xi Ling. Xin Chao ceased his movements and stared at him, frowning. Yang Wuxi moved forward again to hug him. He said gently, I'm Xi Ling, don't you recognize me? Xin Chao didn't say anything. He raised his hand, ready to slap him again. Yang Wuxi nimbly caught his hand and said, surprised, well, did you sleep yourself into a muddle? You'd even hit Xi Ling. Xin Chao was disgruntled. Why would Xi Ling call me Ah Chao? Yang Wuxi sputtered a laugh. Oh, that's right, I forgot. He calls you Mir and Gege. But I can't bring myself to call you that at all. To think that you used your good looks to take advantage of me for this long. Every time Xi Ling called you that, you secretly were happy deep down and not letting it show? Xin Chao turned his head away. Utter nonsense! Yang Wuxi kissed the side of his face. But before Xin Chao could react, he withdrew so he was 3 feet away from him, knowing he'd gone far enough. Xin Chao wanted to sit up, but the movement aggravated his internal injuries. He held his chest, coughing incessantly until the pain slowly lessened. He could only yell angrily, look at our situation, and you're still doing this! Yang Wuxi couldn't help bursting into laughter. Ah, Chao, you're way too cute. You don't even know how to curse people. What does that mean, doing this? I'll teach you. This is called lustful thoughts arrive when material comfort is had. The beauty's rage and coughing fit had flushed his entire face red, and his eyes glistened with moisture. The firelight danced around over the tears that were on the verge of falling. On Yang Wuxi's side, he saw a perfect beauty sent by the heavens, a feast for the eyes. A shame he could only look and not partake. When he realized that Yang Wuxi was deliberately enraging him for the sake of entertaining himself, Xin Chao calmed down slowly. If you anger me again, my injuries will heal more slowly, and if someone comes after your life while we're on the road, I might not be able to protect you. Yang Wuxi laughed. Well, that's fine too. I have a genius plan. Xin Chao was unconvinced. What genius plan? Last time you disguised me as a woman, and it was quite an ingenious method. This time, let's disguise both of ourselves as women. We'll take a carriage and pretend we're going to Hanzhong to live with our relatives. Surely we'll be able to fool even the emperor that way. Hearing this, Xin Chao knew that he still held a grudge. Back then, Yang Wuxi had been ill, so the person who dressed up was Xi Ling, but they shared the same body, so Yang Wuxi couldn't have been unaware. Xin Chao blinked and then avoided the topic entirely. How are you feeling? You're asking about Xi Ling, aren't you? Said Yang Wuxi. Xin Chao was silent for a moment, and then made a quiet sound of assent. He suddenly remembered from his dream earlier. The first half had been about Shizun, probably due to his chest injury. He dreamt of Shizun placing a rock on top of him. It was both disturbing and hilarious, but in the end it was all due to how he dearly missed his Shizun in his heart. Though his training on Zhandu Mountain had been hard, Shizun's protection had been like a towering tree. He blotted out all the human evils of the outside world up until Xin Chao had finally went through his own repeated experiences of hardship. Recalling those years made him nostalgic for the past, and when Shizun had been still alive, when his martial siblings had been close as real family, full of fraternal love for each other. When he hadn't need worry about anything beyond advancing his martial arts, he'd truly been carefree without a single worry. As for the second half of the dream, it had consisted purely of various projections from his life since that time. All sorts of people had appeared one after another, and the only one he could still remember after waking up was Xi Ling. Yang Wuxi asked, Ah Chao, do you wish for Xi Ling to still be here? Or do you wish for him to be gone? In the first place, Xi Ling was a personality that had split off due to Yang Wuxi's qi deviation. If he was still around, that naturally proved that Yang Wuxi had not yet fully recovered. Xin Chao seemed to be at a loss of how to answer. Yang Wuxi gave a slight smile at this. If it were the former, then I must disappoint you. Though the flaw in my demonic core hasn't fully repaired, the personality shifts caused by the qi deviation have already been suppressed. From this point on, Xi Ling will no longer exist. Shin Chao froze a little and then spoke no more, but a look of sorrow slowly surfaced within his eyes. Gathering the outer robe covering his body, he sat and stared blankly, looking both alone and bereaved, both pitiful and lovable. However, young WUSHI knew very well that beneath this seemingly weak and soft appearance lay a spine of steel that would never bend, no matter the storms and tempests. If this had been the past, malice would have welled up inside of him. He would attempt to peel off this person's outer shell to look at the tender flesh hidden inside, to see whether he was still the same even after all the setbacks. But now within his heart was born a strange, indescribable feeling. Though Jiling had already been smothered, had his dissatisfaction left an imprint within his heart? I wish he smiled coldly to himself. Even if you had, what's the point? The Shin Chao whom you love so much will eventually forget your existence. You'll never be close to him ever again. Shin Chao had no way of knowing what he was thinking. After a long time, he gave a quiet sigh and then only said, "I'm tired, I'll sleep for a little while." He lay down wearily. His outer robes were thin, so he curled up a little. His illness had left him somewhat vulnerable to the cold, his back faced young WUSHI hiding his expression. Young WUSHI walked over to him, but Shin Chao did not react. He reached out to touch him, and though Shin Chao slapped away his hand, his fingerprints still grazed some slight moisture. "You're crying?" Young WUSHI was a bit stunned, thinking it incomprehensible. "What is there to cry about? Jiling was merely a fragment of my soul, not even a person." Shin Chao said dully, "He might have been a fragment to you, but to me he was once a living person." Young WUSHI sneered, "Just because he came back to look for you underground?" But Shin Chao ignored him. In Young WUSHI's eyes, among his personalities, Jiling was the weakest and the easiest to take advantage of, and the least like himself. Yet Shin Chao actually liked him the most. When he thought about this, a sneer of displeasure marred his expression. "You're so weak and soft, yet you said you wanted to become my opponent to duel me. If you keep on with this mindset, I feel you'll never reach the martial summit." After a long period of dead quiet, Shin Chao suddenly asked, "What does Sect Leader Yan believe to be the martial summit? Is it my Shizun Chifengge? Is it Sui Yuwang? Or is it Tao Hongjing?" When calling out Jiling, his voice was gentle and affectionate. But now, though they were face to face and only a few inches apart, it was utterly emotionless. "Sect Leader Yan." Young WUSHI suppressed his displeasure and coldly answered, "As great as their martial arts were, they cannot be considered the summit." If it had been anyone else who had said this, they'd come off as overconfident, but before Young WUSHI had entered chi deviation, he had indeed been qualified to say so, even if there had been a gap between him and those three. "That's right," said Shin Chao. "The martial path is endless, so how can there be a summit? This humble Taoist may be untalented, but he still knows that a weak or soft personality has nothing to do with martial prowess. Sect Leader Yan has his own Tao, and I have mine. Don't impose upon others what you don't wish upon yourself. What does me mourning an old friend have to do with you? I ask that you respect yourself more." He'd only known him for a number of days, and only for a few scant meetings. He didn't even know why Jiling was called Jiling, and he'd already become an old friend. Young WUSHI laughed coldly within his mind, but his frosty expression melted completely. "All right. Our survival depends on each other here," he said gently. "It's only some idle chit-chat, so why are you getting angry?" Shin Chao answered by yanking his outer robe over his head, refusing any further conversation. And Young WUSHI didn't press further. The night passed in silence. Shin Chao woke very early the next day. Young WUSHI had already returned from washing his face in the cavern stream. When he saw Shin Chao looking at him, he smiled brightly. "Ah, Chao, lin mi Shanghai Tongbei." His expression was gentle, his mood excellent. It was as though the displeasure yesterday had never occurred. Shin Chao said warily, "You didn't clean the feathers well last night. I had a stomach ache afterwards." "Oh," said Young WUSHI, "that's because I realized the feathers ought to be plucked by hand. I won't use it to clean feathers any time this time." Shin Chao's suspicions remained. "Well, what are you hunting? I'll go instead." The moment he stood, a dull pain throbbed through his sternum. Young Wushi watched him with a frown and then said gently, "You were injured because of me, so I'll go. In any case, I won't use it to clean feathers." Shinchao refused to believe that in the span of one night, Secular Yan would suddenly gain a heart full of gratitude, but his martial arts were greatly diminished. If he did meet with danger, at least he wouldn't be completely defenseless as long as he had his sword. After thinking for a bit, Shinchao handed it over. Young Wushi left with the sword. Before he did, using rolled-up leaves, he considerately scooped some water for Shinchao to wash his face with. With the early spring climate, the cool water against his cheek cleared his mind at once. The jade cistanch's effects were truly extraordinary. His sternum hadn't healed completely, but had already greatly improved after a night's sleep. Even the pain that came with breathing had eased greatly. He sat cross-legged, circulating his chi. He had been doing this for quite a long time when Young Wushi returned. "You left the mountain?" asked Shinchao, surprised. "No," said Young Wushi. "I just went around to observe the situation a little. If everything goes as expected, we should be able to leave the mountain tonight." Shinchao nodded and then noticed he was carrying a tree branch. 2 fish were skewered upon it. "Where'd you get such a large fish?" "Spring brings lots of rain, so the fish are naturally fresh and tasty." Shinchao suddenly had a bad feeling about this. "Well, how did you gut and scale them?" Young Wushi didn't even look up. "I used the sword, naturally." "I didn't lend you Shanhei Tongbei so you could scale fish," said Shinchao angrily. Young Wushi sighed. "Ah, Chao, you're so unreasonable. You said I couldn't use it to clean feathers, and I promised not to. But you didn't say I couldn't use it to scale fish. Besides, isn't half of the fish going to end up in your stomach anyway? Or don't tell me you won't be able to use the echelon of sword heart if your sword smells like fish." The "you're making trouble out of nothing, but fortunately I'm magnanimous and forgiving" expression on his face made Shinchao so angry that he almost picked up a nearby rock and flung it at him. I am gooped, gagged, and bamboozled. Okay, yeah, we're great. I have not been enraptured by a set of chapters, completely overtaken, completely like leaning into the screen, being like, "Oh my god, I need to encapsulate more." Then this set of chapters. Young Wushi! Oh my god. You know what's the craziest part is that I was joking like, be our guest. I've been joking about the connection between Young Wushi and Shinchao as like Beauty and the Beast. And we've talked about it throughout the discussion, right? Because Beauty and the Beast is my favorite Disney movie of all time. I love the story of Beauty and the Beast. And the crazy part is this entire chapter set, this is not, you may be thinking, you're like, "Oh, well, this is like there's something sweet and almost kind," like the Something There song from Beauty and the Beast. You may be thinking that this is that. No. We ain't even there yet. This whole chapter set is more like the wolves have just attacked and Belle and the Beast are back at the castle. And the Beast is like, he's got this little scar on his arm, and Belle like puts the wet rag, but then she's like, "Well, you should be nicer." And he's like, "Well," and then is like, maybe I have been a dick. And maybe I should do something about it. Otherwise, this person that I might have feelings for is going to forget me and leave me, but maybe it's too late. What can I do? And so this is like, we the audience are the household objects watching them from a distance going, "There's something there." But then the question is, what is Shinchao going to do with it? And what is Young Wushi going to do with it? And I am just absolutely beside myself. This is like such, I have never been rooting for a couple more. And I love it because it's so realistic, and I love that Shinchao is sticking to his guns, and he's not just like, the crazy thing, we have to talk about this, because I am just, the layers, there are layers, and there is complexity to this, and it's just, oh god, it's like, it's not even like, I'm not a big angsty person. I'm not an angst person. I really am not. I love a warm, fuzzy, happy ending. I really do. Give me some good smut at the end. I'm great. I like some warm, fuzzy, happy endings. I'm not much of like an angst type of person. But when angst is done well, I'm like, oh, I'm in. Because you want to see if it's going to work out. And here, the angst, it is delicious. It is like pouring chocolate over the ice cream. It is, oh my God. Because, okay, let's dive into this, shall we? We have had WUSHI. I put this up here. So we have had WUSHI, like, he has been physically attracted to Xin Chao from the beginning. He may not have recognized it or acknowledged it, but he has said in passing, he's been like, you're a handsome guy. And the book has made note that WUSHI does notice that Xin Chao is handsome. He's like, well, all these ladies must like you because you're so handsome, and all these people must like you, and no wonder Qin Gong tried to sell you off because you're so handsome. Like, WUSHI has acknowledged that he understands that Xin Chao is good looking. He has acknowledged it, and Xin Chao interprets that because he believes that WUSHI is lecherous and vulgar. He's like, well, you're just lustful, and that's all. The saddest part about all of this is that WUSHI is changing. He is slowly changing from who he once was, but Xin Chao does not see it. And I don't blame Xin Chao for not seeing it because of what's gone down. But Xin Chao's like, well, WUSHI is the boy who cried wolf. He's the boy who cried wolf. And now that he actually has developed these feelings, now Xin Chao doesn't believe him. And it's like, no! So he's always found him physically attractive. He's been in disbelief, and he acknowledges it in this chapter set. He admits it. He's been in disbelief that Xin Chao could be that kind. He's like, nobody could be that nice. Nobody could be that saintly. There's surely some darkness within you, and I'm going to exploit that. And he finds out that no, Xin Chao really is that saintly to a fault. And he's like, oh, you're this way to a fault. Because he tries, he even admits it in this chapter. He's like, I was trying to break him. I was trying to get him to crash because I wanted to prove that he was wrong, that not everybody, that there's no point in being good because everyone in the world's evil. I was trying to get him to admit that and to come and get down on my level, right? And there is a question of how much he's projecting of what's happened to him and his own trauma. There are questions of that, which we know nothing of, because between Xiling and Ayan and him, we don't know what happened to make him the way that he is, because these other two versions of him are not like that. So that's so interesting to me. But yeah, so he decided to try to break him down to prove a point. Didn't work. And he was kind of like, oh, but then there's another layer to it. There's even another complexity to it. There's like, we'll get to that in a hot second with this whole deciding to break Xin Chao down. But his whole thing is he's unkind and he's indifferent and he's cruel to everyone, which is a direct parallel. It's like yin and yang. Like he and Xin Chao are yin and yang. He's always indifferent and unkind to people, and Xin Chao is always nice and benevolent and understanding and open-minded to everyone. But here's the thing. This is where it gets it, right? This is where I get real excited about them as a couple, because they are the opposite to only each other, right? And we'll talk about that a little bit more. Like WUSHI is, and there are shades. I want to say in Xin Chao's mind, this is what gets me, and this is what makes it such a layered and complex couple, is in Xin Chao's mind, WUSHI is indifferent, cruel, unkind to everyone. Because he's been that way to Xin Chao, and he's like, well, he's that way to everyone. And he's seen him be that way to UI and to others. What Xin Chao has not seen is WUSHI be fairly decent to Yu and Yang, fairly decent to Wu Mi, like fairly decent to Bian Yanmei. Like he's been legit hospitable and okay to those people, because otherwise why would they deal with him, you know? So it's like Xin Chao has only seen the worst of WUSHI and it be consistent, but he's not seen WUSHI be civil to other people, and we the audience have seen that. Conversely, WUSHI has only seen Xin Chao be saintly. He's only seen him be the saintly, open-minded, I'm gonna believe in everyone type of person. What WUSHI hasn't seen is what we have seen with him and Qin Gong and him at the monastery. Whenever Xin Chao was pissed off at those guys with the donkey sandwiches, WUSHI wasn't there. And the book even makes note, it's like if WUSHI could have only seen this, to see Xin Chao have a moment where he's not nice, where he breaks down. And him versus Song Jijing, he didn't see that. That was there well. Him versus Kunye, when Xin Chao like did his righteous justice, Yang Wuxi didn't see any of those things. So they have only seen each other be what they perceive of each other. They haven't seen each other be the other versions. Even when Xin Chao stood up to UI and talked and chewed him out, Yang Wuxi wasn't there. So it's like all the moments where they have seen each other, all the times where they could have seen each other be against their perceptions, they've not been there. But we, the audience, have seen it, so we know that it exists. And it's just, God, it's so good. I'm like, I can't even describe into words how insanely complex and wonderful that is. Like, I freaking love that. That's so good. That's so good. So yeah, so there's that. And then Yang Wuxi has been jealous from the beginning as well. He was jealous of Bai Rong and her advances towards Xin Chao. He was jealous of that one escort that they were leading around and his advances towards Xin Chao. Like, he's been jealous from the beginning. So we should not be surprised that he's jealous of Ah Qing in this chapter set. We should not be surprised about that. And the thing is, he did use Xin Chao to try and best Song Jijing. Now, do I think that he was just being cruel to Xin Chao? No. I think that he was definitely using Xin Chao to test his limits, but also because he's like, he's kind of strong. He might be able to put up a fight against Song Jijing, and then I'm killing two birds with one stone. Literally. So, yeah. Did Yang Wuxi do a big boo-boo by doing that? Mm-hmm. Did he do a really bad thing to Xin Chao? Yep. Is he now realizing in this chapter set that he screwed up and he probably should not have done that? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep, he is. He certainly is. This is the moment, like in Beauty and the Beast, when the Beast like yells at Belle and she leaves the castle, and then he's like holding his head in his hands like, I just effed up real bad and I messed up, and now I've possibly ruined any chances for her to view me as anything but a monster. Like, this is his moment in this chapter set. This is the moment Yang Wuxi realizes that. He's like, oh, I messed up. And now Xin Chao is probably never going to view me as anything but this asshole because of what I've done. And the transformation of his character in these chapters, it's been subtly building. It's been subtly building up the last couple weeks. Like ever since Xin Chao saved him from the ambush, ever since the end of volume 2 and the start of this volume, Yang Wuxi has been kind of like noticing that, oh, hey, this guy did these things for me. And noticing, because he can see through the other personas, noticing Xin Chao spoon feeding him the soup with his lips, doing all these things, standing up for him. He like gets to watch from a distance in his own internal mind how he acts around Jiling and Ayan. So he's been able to see Xin Chao's affection towards him, and it was only a matter of time until it affected him. It's just, we're gonna talk about it. I'm flabbergasted. Meanwhile, against all this, you have Xin Chao, who is, he has a soft spot for the innocent and the weak. He admits that in this chapter set. He has a soft spot for people who are innocent or who are downtrodden and weak. Yang Wuxi are none of those things, so he doesn't really have a soft spot for that. But Jiling, who is the innocent child version of Yang Wuxi, who is still mischievous, by and large, he has a soft spot for him. Because he's always there for the underdog. He's always there for the innocent. And he, meets kindness with kindness. He meets kindness with everything, But then, he is stubborn in his convictions to a fault. Like, Xin Chao is stubborn in his beliefs. If he believes this is how Zhandu Mountain should act, this is how Zhandu Mountain should act. If he holds this sword to Shane Tongbei as being this reverent sword of his Shizoon, and then Yang Wuxi's using it to scale fish and defeather birds. We're going to talk about it. I love it. Then he's like, oh, that's my master's sword. How dare you? And Yang Wuxi's like, yeah, you got to eat. But he's stubborn. And Xin Chao has been consistent. It's not just Yang Wuxi. He was stubborn against UI. He was stubborn against Qin Gong. He's been stubborn against everyone. It's not just Yang Wuxi, which is the crazy thing, because Xin Chao is just as set in his ways as Yang Wuxi is. They are both stubborn bastards to a fault, right? And he's not easily swayed, just how Yang Wuxi is not easily. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. I think that Xin Chao, again, they're yin and yang. They're polar opposites. Xin Chao puts on the persona that he is, like, he would go with the flow with anything. But he really won't. He on the surface, you're like, oh, it's Xin Chao. He'll go with whatever we have in mind. He really won't. If he decides he's going to do something, he's going to do it. If he's put in place that he's going to save Yang Wuxi and use him to help you and Yang save the kingdom in the Central Plains, that's what he's going to do. Even if outside forces tell him otherwise, even if his own anger at what Yang Wuxi did to him says otherwise, he's still going to stick to it because he is not easily swayed. So that's how he is. Yang Wuxi appears like he is hard and stone set in his ways. But we've seen time and time again with his character that he goes with the flow a lot more than we give him credit for. Like if something changes, he's like, okay, if, oh, this didn't work, all right, I'll change it. Oh, Xin Chao's not into that? All right, whatever, we'll make this work. Like, he's actually able to go with the flow, but everyone thinks he's set in his ways. And Xin Chao is the opposite, where everyone's like, oh, he'll just be mellow and go along with it, when that is not the case at all. So, again, polar opposites. And then, once he's been wronged, you're not going to earn that trust back. Not easily, if at all. And we've seen that it's not just with Yang Wuxi. With Yang Wuxi, I don't blame Xin Chao for feeling the way he does. He's like, this man betrayed me, and he sold me to a man that could have killed me and done far worse. And how can I forgive him for that? And he's not forgotten it. And he's not easily building that trust back at all. Like, I think he tolerates Yang Wuxi because he knows they have a common goal, but he's like, he doesn't care about Yang Wuxi. He's like, no, you screwed me over. You cried wolf. I'm done. I'm just with you. Just save the kingdom. And that's about it. And I think Yang Wuxi is finally realizing what that means to him in these chapters. Meanwhile, Xin Chao has done the same thing to UI. He's like, oh, UI, you screwed me over. You poisoned me. No, we're done. Bye. Qinggong, you were an asshole and sold me out. No, we're fine. I forgive, but I don't forget. Bye. See ya. And that's it. Like, I mean, Xin Chao is, again, both of these men are consistent. They are consistent and true to their characters. It's just so fascinating to watch Yang Wuxi in these 4 chapters suddenly catch feelings and realize, oh shit, I like this man. I love this man. And he ain't gonna love me back. And I'm like, so what are you gonna do about it, Yang Wuxi? What are you gonna do about it? What are you gonna do about it? What are you going to do about it? What can you do about it? That's the question. Now that the cat's out of the bag, what are you gonna do about it? Are you gonna try to woo him? Are you gonna try to make amends? Are you going to try to do things to set things right? How's that going to work for you? I'm so into this! So let's get into this and talk about chapter 73, 74, 75, 76. These are my favorite set of chapters so far in the story, by the way. They're my favorite set of chapters. The intimacy, the fight with Zhu. Here's my thing. This book is amazing in terms of its prose. The fight scenes, they are amazingly well detailed. They are so gorgeously descriptive. They are a lot of fun to read, but I'm going to be honest, I'm not here for the fights. I'm not here for the fights. I mean, I like the political intrigue. I like the political intrigue, and I like that we're trying to figure out what are we going to do against keeping you and Young safe. How are we going to, like, I love the politics. That part I like. But the glowing, growing, slow burn, like, revelation Yang Wuxi is having that he loves Xin Chao and is realizing the errors of his ways, and Xin Chao is muddling. I feel bad because Xin Chao is kind of in this quagmire of feeling really sad about Zhu Ting's essence being absorbed back into Yang Wuxi and not being around anymore, and he's really sad. And I'm like, sir, I'm sorry that you are sad. You have every right to be sad, but do you realize this? You are melting this ball of ice in front of you. So anyway, I'm here for that. The battles are fine. But they're not what I'm here for reading, you know. They're beautifully written though. They are great. They're a lot of fun to read because I was really getting caught up in the Zhu Ting fight in this chapter set because you could visualize it. Like, there were parts I was like, I wanted to stop reading and just sit there for a second and visualize it and be like, oh yeah, that's what it would look like. If you can visualize what a battle looks like as you're reading, that's when you know. That's to me, that's you got it. So, Ah Ching, Yang Wuxi is jealous of him. He is jealous of him, And so Yang Wuxi in here, we established that he is jealous of Ah Ching. But then the counter to that is that Shin Chao says that Ah Ching is basically reminds him of Shiwu, which we'll get to in a little bit. But that's why he cares about him. He's like, because every time Yang Wuxi thinks that Shin Chao has a crush on somebody, Shin Chao's like, I do not. This is how I view them, sir. Come on now. And explains to Yang Wuxi how this works, right? But, oh my gosh. And the saddest thing is that Shin Chao doesn't get, he's so, at this point, he is so set in his ways, and he's so set in his belief, in his understanding of Yang Wuxi. Shin Chao thinks he's figured Yang Wuxi out. He's like, I know how he works. I'm not gonna be tricked by him again. So I'm just gonna like brush off anything he says. Not gonna be persuaded by it. And on the one hand, you're like, yeah, you understand why Shin Chao is doing that because Yang Wuxi has in the past done all this shit and tricked him and betrayed him. So of course Shin Chao would act like that. That's completely understandable. The part that sucks is that Yang Wuxi is legitimately, the audience, we can see the clues of him changing. And we're like, Shin Chao. At one point, I was like, is that Jiling? And when we found out it wasn't, I was like, it was him? I'm like, oh, Shin Chao, do you not realize how big this is? The change that's happening in this man. We, the audience, are seeing it, but Shin Chao's just like, nah, I'm not getting fooled again. And I'm like, he's not playing. It's real. I'm like, oh my God. So yeah. So, you know, Yang Wuxi has this conversation with Shin Chao about Ah Ching. And when he's like, why are you here? And what a change we've seen in Shin Chao. Shin Chao has gone from the beginning of the story where he's like, hey, do you want these side dishes? And I'm trying to be nice to you, to him being like, why are you even here? And it's like, they've flipped. They've flipped. They've gone in reverse. Shin Chao is now the one that's like, I don't care about you. And I'm like, you're the one that's supposed to be open-minded and kind to everyone, but I know why you're not being that way to him. But he's actually changing. And, I need him to understand and see that. That's the angst. That's where it gets you. That's where it takes the knife and goes like that. So he's like, well, why can't I just, you know? And Yang Wuxi is going to remain Yang Wuxi in the sense that he's a big tease. He's like, well, I smelled food, so I came. And the thing is, we, the audience, you can see it on the page that Yang Wuxi going from being like cold and kind of mocking and being like, oh, well, of course I would do this. And now he's like, come on now. I'm just doing this. Like, what's your big deal? Like, he's flirting with this man. He is flirting with him. And we're like, Shin Chao, did you not see? And there is a part of me that feels like Shin Chao I feel like Shin Chao subconsciously is still into him. Because, like, the soup thing with the mouth, come on now. He didn't have to do that. And even in little things, like Shin Chao screaming at Yang Wuxi to run away. Like, screaming for him to get away. And him even being like, I'm protecting this man to a fault. At this point, even though Shin Chao is saying that he's doing it to, you know, protect the Central Plains and to get back to Yu and Yang and everything, even though he says that, I'm like, but you also care about him. Shin Chao is kind of ashamed, I feel, of the fact that he still cares about him to an extent because he knows how he's been betrayed. And he's like, I can't go through that again. He's like, don't do it, Shin Chao. Don't get fooled by this man. Meanwhile, this man is legitimately changing. And it's like, I need Shin Chao to realize it. I need him to realize it. But yeah, so Yang Wuxi's like, you know, he's like, whenever his flaw was exposed and his personality shifted, he could feel it. Like he'd grown another pair of eyes and was watching the outside, but he could only watch and couldn't control his body. And that's the thing. He's like, you know, we've traveled so long together. He's like, you know, your attitude hasn't changed for me at all. And Shin Chao's like, why would it? You don't care. And the thing is, it's the boy that cried wolf. Yang Wuxi hasn't cared for so long and made a deal out of it and been joking with him that now that it's real, Shin Chao doesn't understand that it's real. And we're just sitting there like, oh my God. You don't realize it. How could you not? But in that moment, Shin Chao, you know, he cherishes kindness. And even if that kindness looks trivial to others. But that's when I want to scream at Shin Chao in this chapter set, because he's like, well, any little act of kindness, I would notice and I would take into consideration and I would cherish it. And I'm like, okay, but this man went out and got you a bunch of sparrows and made you a special dish. He went out and gutted some fish and made them for you. I know that doesn't seem like much, but he didn't have to do that for you. He could have just fed himself and came back to the cave and been like, why aren't you eating? Why can't you make it yourself? The plum blossoms were an act of kindness. For Jan WUSHI, that's like the most kind he's ever been. I thought there was going to be a catch, and there wasn't. I'm like, Shin-Chao, how do you not notice, my dude? I feel like in that moment, I'm like, Shin-Chao, you were being a hypocrite because you don't want to be fooled so badly. And Shin-Chao is so afraid that if he gives Jan WUSHI any benefit of the doubt again, that it would literally break him. I think that that's the thing. Shin-Chao, he's like, if I trust Jan WUSHI one more time after everything I've done and he betrays me again, then we're done. And I feel like back in Rongchong, we kind of had a pseudo moment of that when Jan WUSHI left them there with the apes and the spiders. You could see in the chapters Shin-Chao just kind of breaking down and going, okay, after all we just went through and after all I did to save him, after spoon feeding him soup in my mouth, after getting all this, he left. Okay, fine. And I feel like that was the moment that he just chipped it away and decided he wouldn't trust Jan WUSHI anymore. And then when he came back, but with Xiling, Shin-Chao was like, oh, well, it's okay because this wasn't Jan WUSHI. I wasn't proven wrong. It's Xiling, who's a facet of him, but isn't Jan WUSHI as we know him. And I think Jan WUSHI has figured that out, and now he's like, shit. Because when he asked him later, he's like, is this because Xiling came back to you that you like him? And Shin-Chao doesn't answer, but that him not answering in the moment is the answer. And it's like, yep. Because yeah, from then on, that's why he started to show him favor. He began to treat him as his own person. Only when in front of Xiling did Shin-Chao separate him from Jan WUSHI. However kind he was to the former, he'd be just as cold to the latter. And the more he did that, the more intrigued Jan WUSHI became. Because there's the thing, Jan WUSHI's kind of like, well, why are you treating him so kindly? He's me. Like, he's a version of me. Why are you treating him so kindly and not me? I don't understand. And then that's when he reveals that in the past he teased Shin-Chao for two reasons. One was to try to get him to a breaking point, and the other thing was he was trying to draw out malice, and he was trying to put a demonic core within him to see what would happen if it fused. And he's like, he was his guinea pig. And then Shin-Chao didn't do what he wanted, and he was like, oh, well, what now? And so Jan WUSHI, like his intrigue with Shin-Chao, which is horribly misplaced, and he did horrible things to him, and I'm not going to try to overlook it, but he's kind of being like, well, why are you nice? And, well, you're nice to this version of me that's kind to you, and it kind of is nice. Would you do that to me? And Shin-Chao's like, no, you were terrible to me. Why would I do that? And now Jan WUSHI's like, well, but what if I went? Here's the thing. When Shin-Chao a few chapters ago had Jan WUSHI in the dress, Xiling in the dress, and he was like, good boy, that awakened something. That awakened something in him. Jan WUSHI did not realize he had a praise kink until that moment. And then observing outside, he's like, well, I want you to tell me I'm good. Like just, yeah. He's like, well, I want you to tell me I'm a good guy. Like, why are you telling Xiling? It's me in the dress. It is insane. Oh my God. Oh my God. And he says, but in Jan WUSHI's eyes, whether it was Xiling or Jan WUSHI, it didn't matter. Good or evil, painful or wonderful, he alone should be special for Shin-Chao. There was no need for any other person. So basically he's like, as long as it's me, I don't care if it's Xiling, I don't care if it's Ayan, but I get to get the praise from Shin-Chao. I get to be seen as special to him. Nobody else. So he has decided that only he can be special to Shin-Chao. There's a yaoi that I read a while ago by Zariah Ranmaru that's called Liquor and Cigarettes. It's a one-shot. You should go read it sometimes. It's fun. But in it, the main character is struggling with realizing whether or not they like the other co-lead. They're like, oh, I don't know. We've been friends. We've grown up together. I don't really know. And at one point, and this isn't, I mean, it's kind of a little bit of a spoiler to a part of the book. So if you don't want to be spoiled, just like skip ahead a minute from now. Skip ahead when I'm doing this, and then I'll be done. But he realizes that, you know, if he doesn't confess his feelings to this guy that he likes, that the guy is going to move on and be with someone else. And in that moment, the character that's been very tsundere and very like against his feelings, being like, no, I don't feel that way about him. When he realizes that the person that he likes is going to move on and marry someone else or be with someone else, he goes, but I don't want that. I want that to be me. And that's the moment he's like, oh shit, I am in love with him. And I do love him, is that when he's like, I don't want him to be with someone else. And I think about that moment for a long time in a lot of conversations, a lot of things. But yeah, that idea that Yang Wuxi suddenly realizes, he's like, well, I only want Shin Chao to think I'm special. Even if it's Xi Li or Ayan, I want it to be me, nobody else. I'm like, that's a sign that you like him. And he's coming to terms with that, right? And he's like, well, this would mean a lot to me. And he tries to like tell Shin Chao, he's like, well, if you were just like a fraction of the kindness that you are to Xiling towards me, you don't know how happy I would be. And Shin Chao's like, yeah, I've heard it all before, not interested. And I'm like, Shin Chao, he's admitting these things to you. If Shin Chao from Volume 1 could hear Yang Wuxi from Volume 3, he would be ecstatic. He would be over the moon. He wouldn't know what to do with himself. But this Shin Chao's like, you're lying. It's not real. Oh my god. So yeah. So then, meanwhile, Yang Wuxi's been trying to cultivate to where he can get the scriptures to be, get to the next level with those. And Shin Chao is cultivating this young strategy, and they're working on everything. And they're just like, he realizes in this moment that the last few days have been the most peaceful that it has been for them, and that they really haven't, been arguing or had any frustrations or problems. But he kind of like wants Xiling to come back. And there's a reason for that, because Xiling is Yan Wuxi, but it is like a safe version of Yan Wuxi. There's an innocence there. And Xilian's like, well, this version of Yan Wuxi hasn't hurt me, so I can like this version. But I wouldn't feel right to like the version that's hurt me, which is a very fair and valid emotion for the record. And I like that the series doesn't make this like a Stockholm syndrome. Oh, he's around Yan Wuxi all this time, so thus he slowly comes to love Yan Wuxi. No, he doesn't give Yan Wuxi shit. He holds him accountable and makes him realize, you were an asshole to me, and you were terrible to me, and you need to change if you want to be worthy of my affections. And that's exactly what's happening. And it's kind of crazy. It reminds me of Given. When in Given, there's a character that gets wronged by the person that loves them. And so they have to like look inwardly and go, I was a terrible person. I know you're not going to forgive me, but I'm going to keep working to better myself until I'm worthy of your love. And Yan Wuxi's not there yet, but he's starting to get there. It's starting to come around. He's starting to be like, I have to do this. Otherwise, he's going to move on. And I don't want that to happen. And I'm like, that's how I feel. So yeah. And he's like, and so he even goes, he's like, well, you need to tell me, why do you favor him? If you don't tell me, I'll have him kicked out. And he's like, you would do that anyway. And he's like, God damn it, you're right. He's like, fine, just tell me. And then he explains the whole thing about Shiwu. And the thing of it is that the whole business with Shiwu and the monastery is like Shin Chao's darkest point. It's like, because of what Yang Wuxi did to him, it led him to fighting Song Jijing, which led him to getting severely injured, which led to him getting taken in by Chu Yi and the abbot, which led to their deaths. And so there is a angle of guilt that Shin Chao feels throughout all of that. And he does, that's like the one topic we don't talk about. He's like, we don't talk about the monastery, we don't talk about Chu Yi, we don't talk about, the abbot, we don't do that. And Yan Wuxi's like, okay, I wasn't there, but okay. Yeah, and it's just, he doesn't want to pick at those wounds. Because Shin Chao calls him shameless, and he's like, well, and the thing is, Shin Chao thinks that Yang Wushi's being shameless. He's like, how dare you bring that up? And Yang Wushi's like, well, I was giving a compliment, but okay. Like, it just, their wires aren't fully connecting, but we, the audience, can see that they could get there, but I don't know if they are going to get there. It's just like, so yeah. So then the abbot shows up, and we get the whole business. And again, Shin Chao is not surprised, but kind of disappointed that Qinggong betrayed them. Mm-hmm. Which I feel that what Yang Wuxi is doing in these chapters is, I feel like Shin Chao, his heart has become hardened over this series because he doesn't trust the people that are in power, that have power, because they've proven to him that they act only in their self-interests. And so his heart has hardened towards those people, but it's softened towards those that are in need. It's remained true in that sense. And it's kind of sad that, you know, Shin Chao has realized that, whereas Yang Wuxi is kind of softened a little in the opposite way. Again, they're opposites. He's softened in the way of being like, well, you know, I'm sure they'll be fine, and you know, not everything's gonna be bad. It's like they're just going in opposite directions. It's crazy. So Zhu Ting shows up with his disciples. His disciples, who are Lian Shang and Lian Mei, or Lian Mai. I think it's Mei. But they show up. And the two disciples are going to fight Yang Wuxi, and the abbot, or Zhu Ting, is going to fight Shin Chao. And I really like Zhu Ting as a character, because they kind of reveal that Li Chunge, even though he looked 30 or 40, was actually almost 100 years old, which is crazy. And they reveal that the abbot is not that much younger. So that's kind of wild that he's that old. But that also makes him scarier, because it's like, oh shit, he's actually really strong. Crap, he's almost to Chi Fengge's level. That's not good. And so it's a great setup for this battle between them, and it's a way for Shin Chao to test out his abilities, even though we find out that he's not there yet. He's still got some ways to go. So chapter 74 is all about Zhu Ting, and it really is like the whole entire battle is so beautifully described. I absolutely love it. Like, I loved, you could see the imagery in your mind of their battle as it was taking place, and it was absolutely gorgeous. So yeah, so at this point, Zhu Ting is kind of like, you know, why are you, Shin Chao's like, you know, in the end, why are you going after Yang Wuxi? Because he's like, if you're really going after you and Yang, then why not look inward? Why not get rid of him and not worry about Yang Wuxi, especially when you know he's not as strong? And I love that Yang Wuxi is like, thank you for standing up for me and speaking up for me. And Yang Shin Chao's like, ugh. Like, I love this entire chapter set. Yang Wuxi would be like, thank you for standing up for me. See, that was great, wasn't it? Like the way that Yang Wuxi acts in this chapter set is what I've wanted from him since day one. And I don't like him when he's his black flag, angry, venerable self. I love this, where he's just like, he's still a sassy diva, but he's trying to impress and trying to get Shin Chao and like kind of rib at him, and Shin Chao's like having none of it. I'm just like, love it. Love it. So yeah, they managed to catch a break. Not before Shin Chao takes a blow to the chest, which does not bode well. But then in that moment, they both managed to find a way to sneak past and escape. And instead of going into the trees, they go up to this mountain where this cave is. Mm-hmm. And Shin Chao, of course, is worried that Ah Qing and Wu Ming are gonna be in trouble, and Yang Wuxi's like, they'll be fine. He's like, Zhu Ting's not gonna hurt them. He doesn't want to ruin his reputation. They're gonna be okay. And I love that idea of Yang Wuxi like catching Shin Chao in his arms as Shin Chao is like collapsed. Like that visual. And the thing is throughout this entire battle sequence, Shin Chao and we, the audience, keep thinking Yang Wuxi's gonna leave. Because he was like, get out. At first he's like, go, get out and escape while you can. And Yang Wuxi's like, well, I can't. These disciples are here. And then whenever Shin Chao saw the chance to escape, he grabbed Yang Wuxi and took him with him, even though he told him to leave. And then they go up to the mountain. And I'm going to admit it. This whole chapter set, I thought Yang Wuxi was going to betray him. Because we are kind of conditioned, like Xin Chao, to believe that he's going to betray him. We have been conditioned, like Xin Chao has, to believe Yang Wuxi is going to act in his own self-interest and betray Xin Chao. And then he doesn't. And it's like, oh. Because they get up to the top of the mountain, and Yang Wuxi's holding him, and he's like, he's not going to do anything pointless. And the moment at the end of chapter 74, whenever like Xin Chao's bleeding and Yang Wuxi just takes his thumb and wipes the blood away, I was like, oh, show, oh, series, oh, you, like, he didn't have to do that. Like, there was nothing malice behind that. He just wiped it away, like the most sensual thing. And I was like Cynthia Erivo doing this. Like, what are we doing? And then for him to take the Jade Sistanch and give it to him. How far we've come. How far we've come. Before, Yang Wuxi would have taken it and only used it for himself. But here, he gave the Jade Sistanch to Xin Chao to heal him. I mean, sure, you could argue, you could say Yang Wuxi did it because he knows that he's going to need Xin Chao to help protect him on the road. Sure, absolutely. You could say that. Sure. And I love in chapter 75, we're so used to, like, I nearly had to stop during the reaction to be like, is he being serious or not? Because he was like, well, who told you it's Jade Sistanch? It's obviously poison. And Xin Chao's like, I can tell it's not poison. But for a second, I was like, are we about to get a repeat of the Song Jijing thing? Are we about to get a repeat of that? No. He gave him the Jade Sistanch to heal him. And he's like, if you don't want it, spit it out. And Xin Chao's like, well, I can't do that. Now, to be fair, Xin Chao could probably make himself throw it up, but he didn't. And then he drifted off to sleep. And he had this, he didn't sleep for long. And then he wakes up and Yang Wuxi is there. And then he's like, did Yang Wuxi leave? And then he comes back. And he's like, lend me Shanghai Tanbei for a moment. And I think that a lot of Xin Chao's mindset is not just what he says, but what he doesn't say and what he doesn't and what he does. Like his actions speak loud. I feel like with Xin Chao, his actions speak louder than words, right? Because he says he doesn't trust Yang Wuxi. We believe him. He doesn't want to listen to him. He's like, no. But deep down, Shanhei Tongbei is like his beloved sword. Like he values that thing more than life itself. He does give it to Yang Wuxi. He's not happy with how Yang Wuxi uses it, but he does give it to him. And if he really, like there's a moment in both times he gave him the sword, I thought Yang Wuxi was going to betray him. I really did. Because we've been conditioned to think that. And so I kind of was like, I didn't want it to happen, but in my head I'm like, oh, they're going to do it now. And then they don't. I was like, oh. So he gives him the sword the first time. And he goes out, and I love that he's like, well, do you want these sparrows with their feathers on? And I love how Xin Chao gets so mad at Yang Wuxi. He's like, well, that's what my Shazoon left me. How dare you use that sword that way? And Yang Wuxi's like, why are you getting angry? It's just a sword. They are having the most married couple conversation. Xin Chao's like, I just can't believe you're doing this. And Yang Wuxi's like, yeah. And then when he said, he's like, this sword exists within the heart, not outside your body. He's like, I broke his sword and he moved on. You're fine. And then when he gets done with the skewer of sparrows, he positions them like he goes, this dish is called plum blossom sparrow. And Xin Chao is like, did you just make this up yourself? Like, just doesn't want to come out right and be like, but I'm like, he's bit his tongue saying, did you come up with this yourself? He's so speechless and gives him a glance of concern, thinking that like he's about to be taken over by Ayan or Jiling. And Yang Wuxi's like, I just made this for you as a token of appreciation. You gonna eat it or not? And Xin Chao's like, well, I know that, I saved you, but I didn't think you'd repay me with kindness. Like, what? And I'm like, Xin Chao, pay attention. This man literally did a kind gesture to you. This is something that Yang Wuxi would never have done before. But he's like, he did this to you. And I kept being like, is this Ayan? Is it Xiling? No, it's him. It's Yang Wuxi in this moment. my dude. And he's like, you know, and then he says, how are your injuries? Like, he goes, oh, well, you'll know if you feel it. And then he holds out his wrist so they could check it. Like, I feel that Yang Wuxi isn't bothered by the fact that Xin Chao is so incredulous and Xin Chao does not like. I think Yang Wuxi, I think he likes teasing Xin Chao. He likes flirting with him, and he likes doing these kind little things to Xin Chao because they surprise him. And because he doesn't, I don't think, Yang Wuxi doesn't like clingy. Yang Wuxi does not like clingy. He doesn't like clingy people. He's like, get away, shoo shoo, shoo shoo. And that's why he likes Xin Chao, because Xin Chao keeps enough of a distance. But there's that like yearning and that hunger he feels towards Xin Chao. And I think he likes being withheld a little bit. I think he does. I really do. But he likes the chase, and he likes to like get at him. I think if Xin Chao was falling head over heels with him, he'd be kind of like, well, but why? It's me. And now he's like, but it's me. And Xin Chao's like, ew. This man, I've said it before, Apothecary Diaries, this man and Jinshi would get along like you wouldn't believe. And Xin Chao and Mao Mao would get along really good too. So they have this idea they're going to head to Hongzhong first and then Chang'an. And I like that Xin Chao, he's so like in disbelief that Yang Wuxi could be doing something nice. At first he's like, well, why? We just went in a circle. What was the point? And he's like, well, because they're going to suspect us we're at Chang'an. So we're taking the long way around so we can get some gathering forces. And then he's like, you know, Yu and Yang is in trouble. So we need to try to get back to help him before he's taken out from within. And that's when Xin Chao realizes that the Empress Lady Ashina is a Gok Turk and is probably working with them. And I love that Yang Wuxi's like, what a quick learner you are. You figured it out, Nancy Drew. And it's like, I love their dynamic here. I love it in this chapter set. It's so good. And so this is the thing. Is that Yang Wuxi says the Crown Prince doesn't like his dad. He probably will kill him if he gets the opportunity. And Xin Chao is just like, I can't believe that a man would kill his father, because his bond with his Shizun is so strong. He can't picture someone doing that. And that's when Yang Wuxi is like, I know you're not stupid, but your tender heart holds you back. You're always so optimistic. You never suspect people have a dark side. What would you do if I weren't here? And he's like, you know, if I weren't here to tell you all this and keep you on the straight and narrow, what would you do? And I love Xin Chao's like, well, I would be a lot better if you weren't here. Does he? And the sad thing is, like, I know he believes that, but there's a part of me that's like, is he joking and teasing right back? And as the audience, I'm like, I kind of want them to get to that point. Like, I feel that, like, this story is in ways about redemption, but it's also about staying true to yourself, but also changing at the same time. And so we're seeing Yang Wuxi slowly change, but he's still true to himself, but he's realizing his mistakes and he's trying in his own way to make up for them. But also, I love the theme of the story that's like, you don't just get off the hook for what you've done. You don't get to forego that accountability. And Xin Chao's not letting him do that. And I'm like, it's so good. It's so good. So yeah. So he's like, what about Hanzhong? He's like, well, we're going to go there first and figure things out. And so then Xin Chao sleeps because he is absolutely exhausted. And he has this dream. He has this dream that his Shizun is mad because the sword was used to like defeather the sparrows, and then he's been shaving his beard with it. And Xin Shao's like, I wouldn't do that at all. And then he's like, don't go, Shizun. I liked the metaphor of the boulder on his chest because he's been injured. He got struck in the chest by the staff. So if you've ever had a dream where a part of your body has hurt or something's happened to a part of your body and you wake up and it's aching, then that's connected to your dream, right? So him with being struck in the chest by Zhu Ting's staff is also being tied into the boulder being on him from Shizun. So that's the pressure he's feeling. But metaphorically, it's just like, you know, his Shizun being mad that the sword was used and him being sad about it. But then uh, page, what page are we on? Page 239. Whenever Yang Wuxi, he reaches out, he sees that Xin Chao is like crying in his sleep, and he like goes to like touch the tears on the side of his feet, fresh on the side of his face, and he thinks they're gonna be warm tears, but they're ice cold, and he's like, how could this kid have developed such a tender heart unless he was really doted on? And just as Yang Wuxi is like gathering the tear from his eyes and like looking kind of at him trying to figure it out, then Xin Chao mutters Jiling. It's like Yang Wuxi watching his lover sleep and then they mutter someone else's name. It's like, and then all of these, and this strange cruelty rises to his face, and it's like everything within him breaks. That some estranged, some savage, some gentle, tens of thousands of faces fighting for dominance as a chilling sight. And like he's about to go into chi deviation, and he tries to shut his eyes to like stop that from happening. And then after a moment, he opened them again, reached down carefully to stroke his cheek, and then he grabbed the back of his neck and pulled him up and kissed him. Now, not for non-consensual kisses. We don't do non-consensual kisses. But in my mind, I feel like he's absorbing Jiling one more time. And this was Jiling, like, for the last time, like, enacting his love upon Xin Chao right before he got absorbed by Yang Wuxi. But also Yang Wuxi in this moment, it felt like him being mad because he wanted Xin Chao's affection in that moment. He wanted to be Jiling to get that affection, and so he absorbed it back and tried to like take it in that moment. Not right. Should not have non-consensually kissed Xin Chao. Luckily, you know, for us as the audience and for Xin Chao, chapter 76, Xin Chao wakes up in the middle of the kiss and he realizes what's going on. He's like, oh God, no. And then Xin Chao's like, why are you kissing me? And he's like, oh, well, it's Chao, it's me, Jiling. And in that moment, because he even like kisses, she like, as soon as he pulls away from Xin Chao, he kisses him again and pinches his cheek. And Xin Chao's like, what the fudge? And he's like, well, it's me. In what world would Yang Wuxi have done this? I think that him absorbing all of the other forms back together is going to affect him in some way. But I also am like, you know, Jiling would not call me Chao. And he's like, oh, that's right. He calls you Mian Gege. I forgot about that. And he's like, well, it's just nonsense. And this entire conversation where he's like, you're too cute. You don't even know how to curse people. And then, you know, if you anger me, my injuries will... And I like that Xin Chao is like, you know, if you anger me, my injuries will heal more slowly and I can't protect you. And he's like, well, I've got a genius plan. And he's like, we could both dress as women and ride back to the thing. Like, he's trying to joke around and make Xin Chao feel better in his weird Yang Wuxi way. He senses that Xin Chao is upset and sad, and he's trying to, like, make him feel better, and it's not working. And you're just like, oh, my God. And he's like, well, you're asking about Jiling, how he's feeling. And then Xin Chao is like... And there is a sadness there because I kind of get why Yang Wuxi is upset, because here's this part of him that this man he loves likes more than him. And he's like, but that part of me is me, and you can't like me. So what am I supposed to do with that? And so he like talks about in here where Xin Chao talks about his dream again. And he's like, do you wish for Jiling to be here, or do you wish for him to be gone? And that's been the double-edged sword, is that Xin Chao knows for them to be successful and get done what they need to get done, Jiling does have to leave. But there's another side to him that's like, I don't want him to go because that's the part of Yang Wuxi that I really like. And so it's been this big conflict with him. And that's when he says, you know, and this part here, where we rarely get Yang Wuxi talking to himself, but this part here where he says that he's like Yang Wuxi knows that Xin Chao has this spine of steel. He's like, he's going to be fine no matter what tempests and storms arise. He's going to be okay. He's like, he seems tender, but again, they are polar opposites. Xin Chao seems tender and easily breakable, but he has a spine of steel. Yang Wuxi seems like he is the most unaffected. Like, nothing bothers me, but the fact that Xin Chao won't give him recognition is destroying him. Like, he is actually a lot more glass cannon-y than he seems. They are polar opposites. And he's like, from this point on, Xiling is no longer going to exist. And that's what makes Xin Chao so sad. Like, he just breaks down because then that person he loved is gone. And Yang Wuxi is like, well, if Xiling had already been smothered... Oh, what does he say there? He says, within his heart there born a strange, indescribable feeling. He's fallen in love with Xin Chao. He fell in love with him. And he's like, though Xiling had been smothered, had his dissatisfaction left an imprint with his heart. I like that Yang Wuxi is blaming his love of Xin Chao on Xiling. He's like, well, Xiling's left this imprint in my heart now that he's gone, and that's what it is. That's why I'm feeling this. But then he says, even if he had, what's the point? This line, the Xin Chao whom you love so much will forget your existence, and you'll never be close to him ever again. And then that next line is Xin Chao had no way of knowing what he was thinking. Like, Xin Chao has no idea that within Yang Wuxi's mind, Yang Wuxi is wrestling with the fact that he's just realized that by absorbing Xiling back into his body, eventually Xin Chao, because he's acting like he doesn't care about Yang Wuxi, and he seemingly doesn't, is going to eventually, once they're done saving the Central Plains and making sure Yu and Yang is on the throne and everything's fine, he's going to move on and not want to be around Yang Wuxi ever again. Like, the realization to Yang Wuxi that Xin Chao is only there for the mission and not to be with him anymore has suddenly become real to him. And he's like, well, you screwed up, and now Xin Chao's never going to want to be around you anymore. Now, is that the case for real? Because Xin Chao did tell, whenever Xin Chao told Xiling that he wanted to rise to the level where he could be a worthy opponent to Yang Wuxi, and Xiling's like, why are you telling me this? And he's like, well, I'm telling it so that other part of you hears. Like, there is a part of me that's like, thinking that even after everything is said and done, Xin Chao will still want to be around Yang Wuxi to challenge him as an opponent. He's like, well, isn't that what you wanted? So yeah, we can do that. But now Yang Wuxi's like, maybe that's not all I wanted. And then this whole thing about, Xin Chao starts to cry. And I like that when he reaches to him and he slaps his hand away, he's like, stop. Because he thinks that Yang Wuxi is trying to play with him, but Yang Wuxi is trying to be comforting. And he's like, what is there to cry about? He was just a fragment of my soul. And he's like, well, he may have been a fragment, but to me, he was a person. And then Yang Wuxi's like, just because he came back to look for you underground. And see, that's what Yang Wuxi thinks, it's just that. That's the only reason that he likes him. And we, the audience, know that there's probably more to it than that. But that shot of him reaching for Xin Chao, oh my God. Yep. And he's like, you're so weak and soft, and yet you wanted to become my opponent and duel me. If you kept on with that mindset, I fear you'd never reach the Marshall Summit. And that's when Xin Chao asks him, he's like, what do you think is the summit? Do you think it's all these other that came before you? And Yang Wuxi's like, no. He's like, I don't think they're at the summit. And so Xin Chao's like, okay, sure. Yeah, got that. He's like, it's endless. How could there even be a summit? And then he's like, you have your Tao, I have mine. He's like, don't impose upon others what you don't wish to impose upon yourself. What does me mourning an old friend have to do with you? Respect yourself more. And Yang Wuxi is like, you knew this guy for like 3 days, and you act like it's a horrible tragedy they died. And he's like, what is this? And he's like, fine, we need each other to survive. I'm just trying to talk to you. Why are you getting mad? I feel like that part of the conversation where Yang Wuxi's like, I'm just trying to have chit-chat, what's the big deal, is like, this is such a turning point for the two of them. It is. And so the next day, it's like the one time they both like sleep in silence, and then the next day he's like, lend me your sword, and he's like, I'm not going to defeather anything. And so then he goes and guts the fish. But here's the thing. He's like, in the span of one night, He refused to believe sect leader Yan gained a heart full of gratitude. He's like, but his martial arts were diminished, and if he did meet with danger, he would need to not be completely defenseless. And the thing is, before Yan Wuxi left with the sword, he rolled up leaves and gave water to Shen Chao to wash his face. And then, like, as he came back, he's like, I got us some fish. And he's like, how'd you get and scale a fish? And he's like, well, I used the sword, of course. Like that, just like, he's like, well, I used the sword, of course. And he's like, you can't just scale fish with it. And he's like, you're very unreasonable. You said I couldn't clean feathers, and I promised not to, but you didn't say I couldn't scale fish. And like, what? I love that he says my favorite line. He goes, don't tell me you're not going to be able to do the echelon of sword heart because your sword smells. And Shen Chao's like, just wants to throw something at him. But like, it's a start. Yan Wuxi's being nice to him. He's like genuinely trying to make an effort. There's something sweet and almost kind, but he was mean and he was coarse and unrefined. It's not something there, but it's going that direction, and I'm 1,000 times here for it. I just need two things to happen. I need Yan Wuxi to keep trying to change himself, to better himself, to be worthy of. And here's the thing. I want to say that lightly because people are talking about one of the lessons of this is that, it's not the I can fix him sort of thing, but it's like there is a part of this story that's like, staying true to yourself and recognizing that and loving someone for their flaws. And that's kind of where we're getting at. I'm not saying that Yan Wuxi needs to become this kind-hearted, civil servant to Wu Shen Chao. That's not it at all. He's still a sassy diva that's doing things. He's like, what? Like, but he realizes that he did something very bad to someone he cares about. And he needs to find a way to make amends while still being himself and being being someone Shen Chao would want to open up to and like. And he's realizing that he wants to do that. And it's like, what are we going to get with that? So, I've talked for an hour about these chapters. They're incredible. This is my favorite chapter set so far. So, yeah, there was a lot to talk about. And I'm really excited. We got to the audio drama, FYI, episode 3 of season 2, only got to with Abbott Zhu Ting showing up. That's as far as we got. So next week when we do episode 4, I'm sure that there's going to be more to it. But anyway, I'm really excited. I hope you all enjoyed this discussion and reaction, and I can't wait to hear your comments down below. So anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back real freaking soon with more of Thousand Autumns. And I'll see you then.